I did everything right and they indicted me.
And I don't know what the I'm doing.
Antifa!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Katie Halper Show. We are really excited to be here with you today for our daytime stream. And we do these streams because it's really important to hear from people who are based in areas of the world that can't do streams at our regular time at 7 p.m. on Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you subscribe because we usually do these things at 12 p.m. on Fridays, but sometimes we do them on Saturdays or Sundays or Thursdays. So a way to make sure that you don't miss these great streams with guests like Mohammed Shehada and guests like Mohammed Marandi, who's from Iran and based in Iran. Mohammed Shehada, as you'll see, is from Gaza, but he's based in Copenhagen. The way to do that is to make sure that you subscribe, hit subscribe and the bell. Also, please do like the stream. I was reading a comment where someone was saying, yes, love him, calm, courageous, unsparing about Mohammed. I agree with that. So that's why I said love the stream instead of like it, but you can officially like it by hitting, giving the thumbs up. So please do like the stream. And also, of course, if you can, become Patreon supporters at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And you will be able to get access to extended interviews, early release, behind the scenes. And that is if you do the $5 a month level. If you can't swing that, we would still love it with the $1 a month level. So you still get to go to sleep feeling like you've done something good, which is support this show, because we literally could not do the show without your support. Not just saying that, that's just how we pay for people and things. Not pay for people, that sounds weird. That's how we pay people money to work on the show. And of course, wanted to say, someone asked about 2 streams. What's up with the 2 streams? That is because we have a vertical stream for people who watch on the mobile, and we have a regular horizontal stream. So if you go, we forgot to put the links in each other's descriptions, but I think you can figure it out. Yeah, we can do a competition and see which stream gets more views, the vertical or the horizontal, and also which gets more likes. So now on to the very serious stuff, which is the subject matter of this show. We will be talking about rape and sexual abuse and sexual assault. So I just want to give everyone a warning about that. And we will be joined later in the show by Ryan Grimm. But first we have on Mohammed Shehada, and we are really thrilled to have him on. This is the first time he's coming on the Katie Halper Show. He's been on Useful Idiots, but because of the time zone issue, it's the first time he's been on this show. And then after our chat with Mohammed and Ryan, we'll be bringing on Idris Robinson, a professor from Texas who was almost fired. And that can be considered like our Now for Some Good News segment. But without further ado, here's Mohammed Shehada, who is a Palestinian writer and analyst from Gaza and visiting fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations. So welcome, Mohammed.
Thank you so much for having me, Katie. Good to be back.
Of course. Yes. Thank you for coming on. And I'm so sorry about everything that's happening to the people of Gaza. I mean, I feel like I should say I'm sorry to everything that's happening with my tax dollars to the people of Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Iran. And I guess I just want to start off by asking you if there's anything you want to make sure people know about that's happening in Gaza, anything that you want to share about what's happening to your friends and family.
Yep. So I was recently at a conference in Canada where it was highly accomplished people from different backgrounds, think tanks, business, private sector, politicians, ministers, and members of parliament. And we were having a dinner when people started to introduce themselves and brag about their achievements, history, blah, blah, blah. When it was my turn, there's basically not much. I was highly educated in Gaza, studied in a couple of European universities, but my life as a Palestinian from Gaza is pretty much a cursed life. I keep hearing people say you have huge potential. That is not what my resume says. And it is the life of everyone that I know in Gaza. It's basically people highly educated, highly resourceful, smart, intelligent, brilliant, way more smart than me, yet without any basic life whatsoever. And that has been the way it is since inception, since Israel was created, since 1948, a permanent state of non-life, where basically you try and try and try with everything you have, and you hit this ceiling that just prevents you from having the most basic necessities in life, the ability to put food on the table, to find a job, to have a purpose, to fall in love, to start a family, to move out of your parents' homes, etc. And it was one of the primary reasons why you saw young people in the US in particular feeling this immense sympathy to Gazans. It's basically they sensed an element of their own personal lives in Gaza on extreme, futurelessness, disposition, disenfranchisement, voicelessness, etc. So Gaza is basically the canary in the coal mine. It starts there, doesn't end there. The situation since October 7th, needless to say, genocide, complete flattening, destruction of everything. But since October 2025, that is when it entered a new phase, the Trump so-called ceasefire or peace plan. It doesn't have any element of ceasefire and nothing about peace there. What you have on the ground is basically freezing the status quo as it is. And that status quo is the genocide. So take, for example, what is so-called the yellow line. It cuts Gaza in two pieces. It gives Israel 60%. In those 60%, it's fully depopulated. No people are allowed to live there. Anybody that comes close to it is exterminated on first sight. Israel has an explicit policy to even shoot children if they come close to that yellow line. And in that area, 60% of Gaza, the IDF is having a field trip with destroying every single home, every piece of infrastructure that's left there. Homes, mosques, churches, universities, schools. They post it on the internet daily where they brag about the genocide being carried out in Gaza. There was even this remarkable article in Haaretz about how Israelis figured out, Israeli men in particular, figured out that the easiest way to get laid, to get some action, to have a romantic relationship, is to go and partake in the genocide in Gaza and then post those pictures on the internet. There's one soldier called Shai, and that's my favorite anecdote in that article. Shai says that he never had any luck with women, practically an incel, until he went into Gaza, took part in the genocide, posted some pictures of it, and then went back to Israel. And he couldn't believe how many Israeli women were throwing themselves at him. He basically said that he had to take a sick leave from the army because of all the love, appreciation, and intimate relationships that he was getting. So you have that unchallenged is the primary underlining core premise here, is that before the Trump deal, Hamas could maintain an insurgency in those areas. Now that there is a Trump deal of so-called ceasefire, Israel gets to destroy 60% of Gaza without any challenge whatsoever. In the other half, in the 40%, Israel is bombing it daily by land, air, and sea. There is this famous video of an Israeli soldier with a machine gun late at night where he felt bored and started to just shoot it at random, emptying it towards the West Gaza, the part where the population are overcrowded. So the bombing is one dimension. Starvation is still there. The famine that was well documented by Save the Children, United Nations, Oxfam, it's still ongoing. As soon as the first shot was fired on Iran, Israel reduced humanitarian aid to Gaza by 80%. Israel was supposed to allow 600 trucks per day under the Trump deal. The average that the United Nations lists is about 94 trucks. So that's way less than 15% of the minimum that Gaza needed. The shelter, basic housing, basic infrastructure, it's all gone. Water, running water, that's basically a luxury. Nobody has access to it. You rely on trucks that would come and provide the water for people to fill up in gallons and tanks. And once the tank runs out, you have to wait a day or two until that truck comes back. Shelter, every person I know in Gaza, except for a handful few, are on the street. They live in plastic wrappers, not even in tents, because Israel doesn't allow any temporary housing in Gaza at the moment, under a ridiculous claim that Hamas might recycle the very little amount of aluminum or metal in those tent structures and turn it into weapons of mass destruction. It's lunatic. So the luckiest people I know are the people that are living in bombed out buildings that could collapse at any minute. And the most major problem for everyone there at the moment is this endemic infestation of rats, mice, cockroaches, mosquitoes, flies, and all sorts of maggots, scorpions, snakes. And the most tragic part of it, it's not just that people have to stay up at night with one eye open to prevent rats and mites from biting their kids. It's the fact that the reason why those rodents are thriving, it's because they're feasting on the bodies of over 10,000 Palestinians that are stuck under the rubble. Their own loved ones have been unable to take or retrieve any of those dead bodies because Israel doesn't allow any bulldozers or excavation equipment. So pure death, murder of loved ones is around you all the time. There's this thick stench of decomposing bodies that never leaves Gaza.
Wow. I mean, so I think that it's important to point out that what this means is that there are people who could be saved right now as we speak, right? Who are under rubble, potentially?
No, it's dead bodies
Oh,
primarily.
it's all dead bodies. Okay. But there are people often who would have been able to have been saved, right? If they allowed for the excavation.
Yep. So my late friend Ali, that was my closest friend in Gaza. He was murdered in 2024 right in front of a hospital. But before he was killed, he kept telling me about basically whenever you hear an Israeli airstrike on a home, you can hear some muffled sounds of people crying from underneath the rubble. And usually people's first instinct when they hear an airstrike, the human thing to do is to run away. In Gaza, the first thing people do is run towards the house because they know that there are people they could save. And then Israel would double tap it. They would bomb it again and triple tap it. So people started to learn to wait and see if there is a double tap strike, a triple tap, and then run to the rescue. Or in other instances, people would be so terrified to approach the building. And Ali would tell me about those muffled noises of screams under the rubble that would keep crying for help until they go quiet. There were instances in which people were retrieved alive after several days under the rubble. But now that the Trump plan was created, came into effect since October 2025, there's a 0% chance that anyone is still alive at this stage. The whole idea, Trump scammed Palestinians. He promised to allow all of those bulldozers, excavation equipment, all of the basic medical necessities, infrastructural rehabilitation immediately, as soon as Hamas would sign that deal. As soon as Hamas signed, the only item in that deal that was ever fulfilled was the release of Israeli captives in Gaza, primarily Israeli soldiers. Otherwise, nothing else was ever fulfilled, either fully violated or heavily restricted and obstructed.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this. I'm so sorry. I mean, I keep saying words fail because they just do. And I'm going to bring on to join the discussion someone who's done really important work on this, Ryan Grimm of Drop Site News. He's also a co-host of Breaking Points and the author of 2 books, including We Got People. So welcome, Ryan.
Hey, Katie.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing, Mohammed?
Good to see you, Ryan.
Nice to see you too. And one thing I would actually add, and Mohammed, you might have mentioned this beforehand. The other factor contributing to the rodent infestation was the deliberate, and correct me if you already went over this, the deliberate destruction of so many sewage treatment facilities throughout Gaza, including on the way out, famously, the arson and the destruction of the largest one in East Gaza City. And so nobody has to think very hard or long about what the consequences of basically making sewage treatment unavailable to a population of 2 million people.
Right. Yeah, that's no, and it's no surprise, right? Because on the note of rats, retired IDF Major General and former head of Israel's National Security Council, Giora Eland, wrote in an op-ed in November 2023, quote, "The international community warns us of a humanitarian disaster in Gaza and of severe epidemics. We must not shy away from this, as difficult as that may be. After all, severe epidemics in the south of Gaza Strip will bring victory closer and reduce casualties among IDF soldiers." So, I mean, it's really refreshing when these people are so honest about it.
Yeah. It's just utterly dystopic.
Yeah. And Mohammed, today is, well, everyone watching should know, obviously you do know this all too well, Mohammed, that today is Nakba Day. And we are going to get into the recent reports about the rape and sexual assault committed by the IDF. And again, it's important to note that these are reports that really back up. Some of it, I believe, is new, but a lot of it is things that have been reported by other sources, including you, Mohammed, and the Euromed, where you work. Including Ryan, you've done great work on this. I think the original people who did great work on this were Electronic Intifada, Mondo Weiss, The Gray Zone. But tell us what Nakba Day is, Mohammed, and then we're going to show a clip of a video that you made about Nakba Day. It's a great video. It's much longer than the clip that we're going to show, but it actually, kind of coming full circle, talks about the history of rape.
So basically, Nakba Day, I would summarize it in 2 or 3 anecdotes from my own life. The first one is one of my remaining friends in Gaza, Zach. His father was a fisherman and a sailor in a city called Ashkelon. One day he found a boat carrying Jewish migrants that was about to sink. It was having trouble, stuck at sea. So without a second thought, he jumped into the Mediterranean and started to swim towards that boat to save the Jewish migrants on board. A few years later, Jewish migrants came in military uniform, put him on a truck, kicked him out to Gaza, took his home away, all of his belongings, assets, nothing was left, none. With my own grandfather, he had just bought a land in the 1940s and got married and had kids and was just starting his life. Before even sort of like having any basic roots in the ground, he was uprooted way after the Nakba. So the Nakba starts and peaks on the 15th of May. It started much earlier. You had a lot of Israeli massacres in Deir Yassin and others that happened long before that so-called independence war. Israel starts, or the Zionist militias started those massacres to create and provoke that war in the first place. So basically, in May, that's the peak moment of it. My grandfather was kicked in November 1948. So long after Ben Gurion decided, go into those villages where people are still there, put them on trucks, kick them to Gaza. There was a village next door called Majdal, where people were kicked in 1951. So 3 years after. There was the Israeli labor union. They begged Ben Gurion to allow people in that village to stay because they said it can serve as a propaganda, as a PR for coexistence. Ben Gurion said no. At gunpoint, put them on trucks, send them to Gaza. My maternal great-grandfather, Mahmoud, he comes from a thriving Palestinian family. They would be considered upper middle class. And he had this very famous farm with oranges, fruits, fig trees, etc. And after being kicked out to Gaza, he learned from a friend that there was still the possibility to cross into Israel and back. It carried an immense danger. Israel murdered about 2,000 people that tried to do this. It was mostly farmers trying to go back to their homes, take what they could, pick up, harvest their farms, etc. And one of those people came back to Mahmoud with a bag of fruits from his land. And he said, your land is there, it's unused, and it's uninhabited. And as soon as he smelled it, that was basically the start of his death. He began to cry, had a heart attack, and died shortly after. So those are the 3 anecdotes from my perspective. From an Israeli perspective, I would say the peak story is the one of Yoav Gallant. That's the Israeli war minister that carried out the genocide in Gaza. He went on this American podcast where he tells a story of how cool his background is. He said that his father was part of Zionist militias. He was a child soldier, and then he came to Palestine, took part in the war, and afterwards he asked his commander for a house. And his commander took him to Haifa and said, look, the city has now been depopulated. Choose any home, walk in there, you get to live there. So he pointed at a house. The only problem is that the family was still there. So his commander decided that he has to live with that family and that their family should be forced to share the house 50-50 with him. So he said, I was brought up with an Arab family in the house, in our house, and it was 2 brothers. One of them would take me and babysit me and put me on his knees. As soon as 1967 happened, that's the second major war, The family asked us to see their relatives in Ramallah. So we sent them on a truck to Ramallah and we kept the entire house. And that's what happened to my grandfather in Gaza. 1967, Israel kicks him out to Egypt. The other dimension of the Nakba is that everything that you see unfolding in Gaza now has been a continuity of history since 1948. Famine, spread of disease, poisoning of water wells. There is an article in Haaretz about deliberate poisoning of water wells to drive the Arabs out. It sometimes gives me, Katie, this sort of feeling that Israel would behave in lunatic ways that confirm to anti-Semitic stereotypes, so that once you point a finger and you say, you're pointing our water wells, you'll be like, that's an old, centuries-old trope from Europe. But there was so all of those acts happened in 1948. Mass systematic rape. It's something that Ben Gurion would brag about. The systematic murder of children and women. It's something that Ben Gurion explicitly instructed his soldiers to do. And all of it has been continuing. The only difference is now it is accelerated 10 times as much. So in 1948 and in 2023, Israel killed during the genocide in Gaza 10 times more Palestinians than in the Nakba. The other last point to raise is basically the shamelessness about it. So in 1948 and after, there was this deniability. It never happened. The Arabs were never there. We were here first. All of those propaganda and lies and blah, blah, blah. But now Israel doesn't feel the urge for having any moral ground whatsoever. They brag about it. They delight in this systematic annihilation of a people. And that's the major difference, is that today it makes you 10 times more popular in Israel to say we should murder Palestinians. It's frightening.
Yeah, it is really dystopian and unbelievable. And it's true. I mean, it is, what a great trick to commit egregious, kind of mind-boggling crimes, then have people point it out, and then you get to accuse those people of being anti-Semitic or spreading conspiracy theories. I mean, the blood libel has lost all meaning. Like the way that it's thrown around to mean stuff that has literally nothing to do with it. I mean, they try to use this term to describe things that are documented on video. Ryan, do you want to give you a chance to respond? Then we'll look at this video that you actually did, Mohammed.
Yeah, no, the only thing I'd add to that, I'm just trying to imagine it from the perspective of, people there in the 1940s who are literally having like wells poisoned, saying, hey, like you're poisoning our wells. And then being told that back in Europe, that was a thing that Jews were accused of doing unfairly by other Europeans. From a Palestinian perspective, you got to be like, well, I'm sorry that happened in Europe. Like, what does that have to do with I can't drink from my well right now?
Right. Yeah. Because
these particular people, I'll name them, like this guy, and this guy poisoned the well.
Right.
It must be, utterly disorienting on top of everything else.
Right. Yeah. And, it's, it reminds me of how every accusation is a confession, except in this case there was, and this is what's so frustrating, is that it's so, I mean, this is not the priority. The priority is what is happening to Palestinians, but obviously, like, and we've talked about this before on the show, that Israel and Zionists need anti-Semitism to justify their existence. So of course they're happy to do things like that, but it really does make it so that people are so skeptical about claims of anti-Semitism. So that when there are things that are anti-Semitic, people are going to just not believe it. And we see that. And, let's take a look, though, at this incredible video that you put together, Mohammed. And this is just a piece of it.
The Palestinians. And David Ben Gurion didn't just order the ethnic cleansing. He even ordered the brutality against women and children.
We need to harm them without mercy, women and children included. Otherwise, this is not an effective reaction. During the operation, there is no need to distinguish between guilty and not guilty.
And he knew all the gruesome details as soldiers perpetrated his vision.
Battalion 22 arrested the man and woman. They killed the man, washed her, and then 22 men gang raped her.
And this was...
By the way, just in case people are just listening to this, as is indicated on the screen, this is from David Ben Gurion, who was Israel's first prime minister. This is from his diary.
Not a random incident. Here is what hardcore Zionist historian Benny Morris said when asked about how many rape cases took place in 1948.
In Acre, 4 soldiers raped a girl and murdered her and her father. In Jaffa, soldiers of the Kiryati Brigade raped 1 girl and tried to rape several more. At Hunin, which is in the Galilee, 2 girls were raped and then murdered. There were 1 or 2 cases of rape at Tamtura, south of Haifa. There was 1 case of rape at Kula, in the center of the country. At the village of Abu Shusha, near Kibbutz Geza, there were 4 female prisoners, 1 of whom was raped a number of times, and there were other cases. Usually more than 1 soldier was involved. Usually there were 1 or 2 Palestinian girls. In a large proportion of the cases, the event ended with murder. Because neither the victims nor the rapists like to report these events, we have to assume that the dozen cases of rape that were reported, which I found, are not the whole story. They are just the tip of the iceberg.
When a New York Times reporter discovered one of the massacres, David Ben-Gurion did exactly what Israeli leaders do today when the IDF is caught red-handed. First, he denied it, and then issued a public apology saying it was a mistake. But 3 months later, he included the bombing that resulted in the murder of 5 Palestinian children in a list of successful operations.
I mean, you can draw the exact thread to today. So can you talk about these events and also link them to what's happening today, and specifically the sexual violence?
Absolutely. So basically what you have there is early Zionist leaders on the record. They were pretty open about the atrocities they committed against Palestinians. Because back then there was not much media attention around Palestine. There was a colonial era, wars of independence all over Africa. The world is busy with a lot of other geopolitical events. So they were very open and unashamed about it. They started to deny it shortly after. As soon as Israel got more spotlight, Palestinians tried to have a narrative or a voice with the PLO. That's when Israel starts to systematically deny that all of this ever happened. But what you have with Ben-Gurion is a clear admission that we came to this land, we found a native population, they're indigenous to it, they would never give up their homes willingly, so we have to ethnically cleanse them. Even the idea, so there were multiple proposals on the table. One is partition, the other is a 1 state with democratic rights for all. The Arab countries surrounding Palestine, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, etc., they supported a 1 state with equal rights for everyone. The United Nations, US dominated back then, supported partition. There were ministers in the US government, particularly I think the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Foreign Affairs, that both opposed partition. Truman infamously said that he has a lot of Jewish voters, he doesn't have Muslim voters, he needs to please those. So basically of those 3 options, partition, equal rights for all under a democracy, or ethnic cleansing, Ben-Gurion was very explicit. We will accept partition only as a strategic tactic until we build up force, and we have to ethnically cleanse the population. Because even under the partition, the Jewish state would have had about a 40% Arab minority, so close to half, which would have meant paralyzing an ethno-nationalist state from being created that dominates and crushes whatever minority tries to raise its head. So basically the plan was there all along. There's what's so-called Operation Delete. It's premeditated ethnic cleansing, premeditated genocidal acts. The plan destroyed the ability of Palestinians to exist as a group, kick them out as much as possible. The only thing that stopped it was Jordan and Egypt trying to protect their own borders from a flood of Palestinian refugees, because the massacre started again. Deir Yassin and others, they started a month before the War of Independence. And those governments acted to protect their own borders, to stop those massacres, to preserve some areas for Palestinians to exist in so they wouldn't flood those countries. And it ended there, the armistice plan. What you had after is consistent Israeli attempts to ethnically cleanse that area. It was perfectly captured by Moshe Dayan, the Israeli defense minister, who said, we will tell Palestinians we have no solution. Whoever wants to live here shall live like dogs, otherwise they should leave. The only inaccuracy in that quote is that Israel does not treat Palestinians like dogs. It treats dogs way better. The reason why Israeli soldiers have been systematically taking human shields in Gaza is, according to those Israeli soldiers, to preserve the lives of dogs and avoid or prevent any harm from happening to those dogs. Basically, There's this Israeli columnist, Gideon Levy, that wrote around 2015. He said, we treat Palestinians like animals. And he got a lot of protest letters from Israeli animal rights organizations. How dare you compare Palestinians to animals? There were all of those cute stories during the genocide about good-hearted Israelis that would rescue donkeys or dogs out of Gaza and take it, export it to Germany. Germany was taking in a lot of donkey evacuations instead of actual human beings. And donkeys in Gaza were the alternative transport system after Israel cut off all fuel and started to destroy any moving vehicle whatsoever. So the ruthlessness has been consistent. For a Palestinian like me, it's like you never get to catch your breath. I opened my eyes to the world. My first memory was an Israeli airstrike. I was 4 at the time. It was an airstrike and a newspaper. Right after, lots of school strikes, checkpoints all over Gaza, Israeli military invading our neighborhoods constantly. As soon as Israel, so-called, pulled out of Gaza, the unilateral disengagement, so-called, they immediately closed Gaza off from the entire world, immediate blockade, 2005. So food became a very scarce luxury. And right after, a few months later, Israel began to bomb Gaza way heavier than before the disengagement. You have Israeli ministers on record, like Ehud Olmert, Ehud Barak, Netanyahu, and others, that were explicitly saying that we are disengaging from Gaza to make it easier to kill people there and to bomb them 10 times as aggressively when we don't have our settlers living amongst them. So as soon as that happens, intensive bombing of Gaza in 2006, bombing Gaza's only power plant, water infrastructure, intensifying the blockade. I didn't get to catch my breath from there. Then 2008, I had to see my own father withering and dying before my eyes without being able to do anything about it, starving to death, dying by disease and famine. And as soon as he died, my entire universe shattered. I was a child at the time, and I would go into my room and cry and pray constantly, God, please let it be me, not him. Take me instead of him. I knew he was dying. I couldn't do anything about it. It crushed my universe. But as soon as that happened, I didn't even get a chance to mourn him. Operation Cast Lead starts. That is the most barbaric Israeli onslaught on Gaza back then, that was designed according to the United Nations to, quote, punish, humiliate, and terrorize the civilian population in Gaza. You take the timeline ever since: Operation Pillars of Defense, Operation Rainbow, Operation Summer Clouds, Operation Rain, Operation Protective Edge. The operations never ended up until this genocide. The genocide is basically Israel realizing that all of those operations, all of those mowing the grass, were too slow. They were not fast enough. And they had the opportune moment with a strong atrocity propaganda narrative to finish off the Palestinian question. They failed. It didn't work as they anticipated. People refused to leave. Egypt refused to take in the entire population in Gaza. But that doesn't mean giving up on it. They're still continuing this.
By the way, you may have heard some barking in the background. I think that was Bodhi, my parents' dog, who was very upset about the weaponization of dogs. I have to bring her downstairs. I just have to show people her to see that she's very upset about this. Sorry. And then, so I'm bringing this up because I have to go off screen for a second to bring her downstairs. But this is Bodhi, everyone, and this is honestly. I mean, I know we're talking about something extremely serious, but we're going to get into these stories about canine rape, and it is just. I mean, they claim that they like dogs in Israel, and they turn them into, I mean, they make them do unthinkable things. So even those people who claim to like dogs and are offended by the comparisons to Palestinians because it's bad for dogs should be up in arms. I mean, that's such a disgusting thing to even say, as if the idea that there are people who care about dogs and not Palestinians, but we know that's true. And so they should be ashamed of what they're doing to dogs as well. Okay, Ryan, I'm going to.
She looks traumatized.
Sorry. What?
She looks traumatized already. You need to take her away.
I know. Yeah. She literally started barking when you were talking about the dog stuff. So, and she's a big. She's very. She's an ally. Okay. So keep talking, Ryan. Take it away. I will be listening.
Mohammed,
off screen.
I'm curious. Have you gone through at this point the full Civil Commission report?
Major parts of it, but not all of it systematically. I have a friend, Puya Pascat, who read it very thoroughly and produced an article today. I'll send it to you. But basically, like, you know a book by its title. The book here, the report, is authored by a serial pathological grifter. You know this better than I. Basically peddled a lot of hoaxes, peddled a lot of conspiracy theories, used pictures from Kurdistan, Kurdish fighters, to imply that those were Israeli victims, etc. But the best part about her story, Kochav El-Kayam Levy, is basically she ran a one-person organization that alienated even the Israeli government from working with her, because they were so embarrassed by her serial inaccuracy of reporting, her flawed methodology, that basically they stopped platforming her around to the world. The Israeli government was getting questions about from foreign governments saying, did you create an actual committee? That committee is now reaching out to us. What should we do? And they felt embarrassed to say that this was a scam, so they would just try to distance themselves from her.
And so it appears that she finished this report of hers, according to like some comments that I've seen from people who have seen it, by September of last year, which is curious and I think worth unpacking. So we know that the Israeli government distanced itself from her because she had trafficked in too many obviously fake accounts of atrocities that then unraveled, and then that did damage to Israel's credibility and Israel's standing. So they kind of threw her under the bus. She had raised a lot of money from donors to do this research. She finally, it seems, completed the research by fall of last year. So 7 months later, we get the report being made public.
Yep.
Now we know that the New York Times has been reaching out, for comment, through Nick Kristof of the New York Times, reaching out for comment on the investigation that he's been working on, which Israel knew would make a huge splash internationally, because even though for you or I, nothing in the report was kind of fundamentally new, his ability to get people on the record, to be photographed, but to put it into the New York Times was going to make it resonate in a way that it's not going to, let's say, even drop site news or on Twitter or anywhere else. And they understood that deeply. And
the liberal Bible.
Exactly.
I remember when the Screams Without Words story came out in the New York Times, that I had a couple of famous journalists, I will not disclose their names, but they were highly reputable. And they wrote me that they found this story very bogus and that it didn't add up. But they were very afraid to challenge it. They said that this is the liberal Bible. Once it's there, the fate is sealed. If you say any word about it, you will be canceled. You'll be accused of rape denial. But I also remember, so one of the funders of that civil commission report is the Canadian government. And I remember I think around 2024, I got a phone call from a Canadian diplomat that is working in the designated department to investigate sexual violence and violence against children. And we had a conversation for about an hour. I was introduced to her through a UN special rapporteur, and she mentioned all of the Israeli allegations. I went through them one by one. She told me at the end of the call, I was like, well, what do you think about what we discussed? And she said, this is a sham. This is atrocity propaganda, and they're trumping it up. They're trying to force the Canadian government to come on board with this. She didn't see any substance in it whatsoever. She said that this is a very obvious tactic. And that was the end of the conversation. Didn't follow up on it with her after. But now to see the Canadian government funding this, she basically told me that people higher up, it's basically the politicians, were forcing the civil servants in the foreign ministry, as well as civil society in Canada, telling them that if you don't come and condemn sexual violence on October 7th, mass systematic rape, then you are going to lose funding, or you're going to be under-resourced, or you're going to fall from grace from this government. And about that report, the new report, the Civil Commission one, the most substantial element in it is what she claims to be an undisclosed archive. It's a protected archive where she has all the evidence, but she's not going to let anyone see it. So she claims to have interviewed hundreds of people, have gathered photographic evidence, footage, video material, testimonies, but all of it is locked up. and you have to trust her on that one, that the material is there, but you can't see it because it's too gruesome.
Yeah, so you guys are, of course, comparing the claims of rape that come from.
Just one more other point to wrap that up. So,
but just set up the context, because I heard this whole thing, just so people know the civil report when you're wrapping it up, just so that if people don't know what you're referring to.
Yeah, we mentioned it at the top.
I know,
so my theory is that they had this sitting around. They didn't think it was credible. They thought it would be embarrassing again. But then it was on the shelf since September, and they rolled it out to counteract the Christoph thing, and immediately began accusing Christoph of trying to front run this report.
Right.
When in fact it was, I think, precisely the opposite, because we know that this report, this PDF, was done by September. And so why didn't they release it in September? I think because it's not credible, nothing new. It's embarrassing again. It's a lot of the same fabulists who have presented, debunked and fabricated lurid claims, but they needed something. And I think the Western media was in an even more willing posture to bend over backwards to Israeli propaganda out of guilt of the New York Times publishing a critical piece. They're like, okay, well, the New York Times hit them, so let's just go ahead and do credulous coverage. Like a makeup call. Let's do credulous coverage and platform these folks that people who've been covering this know these names: Rami Davidian, Sherry Mendez, Zaka, to like put them forward as credible narrators at this point isn't serious. But I think they were like, well,
we need something.
We
need something. And it's interesting because correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see the usual suspects like Dana Bash and Jake Tapper. I don't think they've covered this October 7 Redux report recently.
CNN let Christiane Amanpour interview her, and CNN.
Recently?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think you're right, because then I think Dana or Tapper then would get pushed on. Well, why haven't you covered?
Exactly. Right. So that's what my theory is, that the reason we're not seeing these people who push these conspiracy theories, which they never corrected or retracted, by the way, is because of the simultaneous publication, it would be too egregious to cover one story and not cover the Palestine rape story. In other words, it would be too much of a blatant double standard, because this is in the New York Times. As you guys said earlier, if it were on DropSite, if it were in Euromed, if it were on, Electronic Intifada, Dana Bash and Jake Tapper would just ignore it. But because it's been in the New York Times, it's part of the official discourse. And so that they would love to cover anything that claims that there was a mass rape campaign on October 7th. And I think they're not doing that because before, when they were covering this, there hadn't been any mainstream coverage of the rapes of Palestinians. But I wanted to let's actually review what Christoph has revealed, and then let's talk about what in that is new and what in that are things that were already revealed. Oh, sorry, I had muted you, Mohammed, just because your audio. Okay.
No, I think Ryan is better equipped to discuss that part.
So Ryan, you want to go over that?
I mean, I don't know if there's anything new. I didn't come across anything new. This guy Rami Davidian, who was a farmer from the area who went on a hero's tour claiming to have saved hundreds of people, and then was later exposed by Channel 13 to be a fabulist and to have not just exaggerated things here or there, but to have invented stories start to finish. He's heavily cited in there. This woman Sapir, who's over the top lurid stories have really not been corroborated and fallen apart, was in there, but in a shady way, in which they kind of, the way that they write it, like you'll have just the accounts, and you read the accounts, you're like, wow, that's horrifying, that's awful that happened. And then you look at the footnote and you're like, oh, This is
And
your
this is
source for
the
this?
this is the October 7 claims. This is not the Christoph. So we'll talk about this and then we'll go to the Christoph, just to clarify. Yeah.
No, so that anyway. So that's what you come across in the Christoph claims.
Oh, right.
No,
I
no,
see.
no,
Right.
sorry. That's what you come across in the Civil Commission one.
Right.
Lots of lurid and horrifying things that then when you read the footnote, you're like, oh, I know who this source is, and this has been checked, and this didn't check out. Christoph found a pattern, throughout detention centers and among settlers in the West Bank of using sexual violence in a systematic way against Palestinians, like just straight up, like.
Right.
And his findings are in line with what many human rights groups have said and what many Palestinians have previously said. Some of the Israel threatened some of the sources. One of them went from on the record to no longer on the record. He wrote about that. Some of the courage it takes just to talk about that in the best of circumstances. For a man or a woman, but definitely for a man, is difficult to convey in words. To do that while you're still in the custody of the people who are doing it to you is a courage that just defies even being able to get in touch with it.
Right. Yeah. And this is the article, by the way, The Silence That Meets the Rape of Palestinians. That's one of the people interviewed, which again does require incredible bravery. Mohammed, what stood out for you in the Christoph piece?
What stood out for me is basically the question of why didn't anyone do it earlier? All of the documentary that he provides there has been out there since, I think, 2024. There was a very concrete, substantiated United Nations report that said and gave concrete examples of sexual violence and sexual assault on Palestinians. One incident was a female soldier that came and forced 2 children in Jabalia to strip down to their underwear and dance while she filmed them on her phone and was laughing hysterically, all of it at gunpoint. There were other examples about the IDF forcing women to strip naked in front of their male relatives, husbands, fathers, brothers, siblings, even children, as a way to humiliate the entire family on the Salah ad-Din road that was leading from the north of Gaza to the south. The evidence was there. There were numerous examples. There were then multiple reports. One of them was in the New York Times itself, but it was buried. It was an article with over 3,000 words, and it was buried at the very bottom of it.
Yep. And they didn't use the word rape, right? They just described, I think, the penetration of insertion of sticks into people's rectums.
They were being very sort of terminological, very medical, very technical about it to avoid saying the word rape. So there was one example about a female commander that asked and ordered her soldiers to anally penetrate a Palestinian hostage. There were other examples about a nurse, a United Nations worker, etc. So the examples were there. It didn't get any attention back then because the New York Times deliberately buried it in there. I remember a similar tactic from the New York Times. In 2018, there was this nurse in Gaza, Razan al-Najjar. She was murdered by a Palestinian sniper while treating Palestinian protesters that were wounded by the IDF. And then Israel came out and said that she was Hamas, she was a human shield, and that she was throwing bombs on Israel. And
she was murdered by a Palestinian sniper or an Israeli sniper?
An Israeli sniper.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
So basically, the Israelis said that she was Hamas, she was a human shield, and that she was throwing a bomb on the Israeli soldiers. None of those sort of so-called allegations stood up to any scrutiny. There was even the Israeli doctored video. They showed a video of her that was cut from the middle where she says, "I'm here today as a human shield." And the rest of the video is her saying it sarcastically, saying, "I want to protect children from being murdered by Israeli snipers." They cut it there and said, "Look, she's a Hamas human shield." The New York Times, after that video was exposed as doctored, they were supposed to cover it. So the article, I think, was over 20 paragraphs. The first paragraph, the Israeli allegation. This nurse was shot because she's a Hamas human shield. Second paragraph, the Israeli allegation explained. Third paragraph, if you go to paragraph 18 at the very bottom of the article, it says that the video the IDF produced is doctored and none of it is real. It's just buried in the very bottom. They trust that nobody would read it. And it's the same trick that you have now with the commission, the civil commission report about October 7th, mass rape, mass atrocities, barbarism, etc. If you look at that report, it runs into hundreds of pages. I think it's over 200 pages. The first 30 pages are either acknowledgements or endorsements or colorful quotes by people like Hillary Clinton, Sheryl Sandberg, Rahm Emanuel, all of those sort of pro-Israeli lobbyists in Washington. And all of it, it's very unusual for a report to start with 17 pages of endorsements. The idea why you would start it this way, it's because you want to compel the reader that this has huge credibility. So, for example, in European media, European newspapers, they reported all of this verbatim without challenging it, without questioning any of it, as a Bible, as a biblical text, as the word of God. And the reason is because they said it is impossible for a report endorsed by that amount of people to be fake. And it is impossible for an organization that has all of those fancy people on its board to be fake. The only problem is that it's an organization of one person, according to Israeli media. It's a one-man show, or it's a one-woman show. So basically, first 35 pages are acknowledgements, colorful quotes, endorsements. Then you get a summary, and the summary is basically telling you, believe us, there was systematic, widespread rape that was pre-ordered, pre-instructed. It was so gruesome, it was so barbaric, it was so savage, before presenting any evidence. You start by all of the things that they want you to believe. And in the report itself, she keeps repeating that we are providing this report in order to prevent people from denying or questioning Israeli rape allegations. The basic job of any journalist is to question allegations. But once you declare questioning a taboo, you're like, either you take this as it is or you'll be canceled. The substance of the report, it's basically regurgitating every single news article that was ever written about the topic, followed by a wild, bizarre claim that they have a hidden, concealed archival material that shows conclusive proof of rape and sexual violence, but they cannot show it to anyone because it's too gruesome and too graphic. That's the report. It's insane.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things that's so incredible about the people who are claiming that the IDF would never rape, could never rape, is that Israel doesn't deny it. Like, if you look, I mean, there is an actual video, and we're going to play this video, which shows, this is at the prison torture center, as B'Tselem described it, State Teman. It shows a Palestinian being grabbed and taken behind shields. So, like, it's a little... Technically, you don't see what's happening because it's behind, I don't know, are they shields? Is that the word? I don't know the military world. It sounds so anachronistic, but whatever, they're shields. But it's so clear because you see their bodies, and it's so clear that this is a rape, and nobody in Israel denied it. I mean,
and there's medical records.
Oh, right. There's medical records, which are, I mean, deplorable to even refer to. But yes, there's medical records about what this victim who had to be hospitalized. But it's just so interesting that, I mean, that goblin ghoul, Emily Schrader, who, I mean, she really, I saw her the other day on Piers Morgan. She was like green. I'm not talking about people's looks in terms of, she just happens to look green. I think like kind of like that emoji of the vomit emoji. She just happens to have that. But she was saying that's not what you see, because Anna Kasparian brought up the video of someone being raped. She's like, that's not what you see. That's not what's happening there. I mean, the idea that that's not what's happening there, you then have to not believe all of Israeli society, including a Knesset member who didn't debate whether or not it had happened. The debate, to the extent that it was a debate, was whether or not it was legitimate to, quote, insert sticks into people's rectums. And what this Knesset member said out loud on a microphone, this was not a hot mic moment, this was in session, was that, yes, it is legitimate. So no one can say with a straight face that this wasn't a rape. But I want to show this video, which again is disturbing, but I think it's important for people to remember that this is what happened. And then we're going to show a video of the member of Knesset being asked about it. Israeli soldiers implicated in the rape of Palestinians protected by Israeli authorities instead of being held accountable. You see that that's the, this is from July 2024. When 5 Israeli soldiers at the State Haman detention facility carried out a brutal assault on a Palestinian detainee from the Gaza Strip. The detainee was bound hand and foot and blindfolded. He was raped through the insertion of a sharp object into his anus, causing broken ribs, a punctured lung, and severe rectal injuries. The Israeli military advocate general dropped the charges against the soldiers involved, citing exceptional circumstances and complexities in investigation procedures. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other officials welcomed the decision, describing the soldiers involved in the crime as heroes. Israeli Knesset member Hanok Midwalski justified the incident, saying that inserting a stick into a person's anus is quote-unquote legitimate. This once again shows that the issue extends beyond the failure of Israel's judicial system to hold perpetrators accountable. It reflects a political will to protect those responsible and frame their actions as, what did it say, legitimate, I believe? As within a narrative, frame their actions within a narrative of terrorism. And that is from Euromed, which is a place that you work for. But you're coming on, Mohammed, not as a spokesperson for that organization, right? Is that?
Yep. Now I work now at the European Council on Foreign Relations.
You
but
have
this,
though, right? You used
but
to work.
with this particular incident, the way that all of it started is an Israeli doctor thought and believed completely that it was another Palestinian hostage that raped this victim. And that's the only reason he reported it. He did not expect that it was soldiers. If he had known, he would have never reported it. There were many incidents after this. Not a single Israeli medical professional ever reported any of them. We didn't hear any of it. This one was the first and last ever reported by an Israeli doctor, although we know that were dozens after that we know of because of the own survivors' testimonies.
Right.
With that incident, as soon as it happened and as soon as the doctor wrote the report, he tried to redact it after. Other doctors came and said he raped himself, that those injuries were self-inflicted. That was literally the medical testimony of Israeli medical professionals, that person zip-tied by both hands and legs and blindfolded 24/7, raped himself anally until his intestines exploded and broke his own rib bones and shattered his own lung. That was the testimony. Those are Israeli doctors. It's not even shocking. Do you know this famous incident of this Palestinian child, Muhammad al-Durra, that was murdered by the IDF in the early 2000s?
Yeah.
Netanyahu created a commission 13 years later after that incident. And that commission investigated it thoroughly and found that Muhammad al-Durra, get this, that Muhammad al-Durra is still secretly alive and was never killed in that incident.
Oh, wow.
It's lunatic. It's a very lunatic government. So basically with that incident, the Israeli Attorney General was very afraid. The Attorney General of the military was very afraid of an ICC investigation because of the principle of complementarity. So she thought, okay, we have those soldiers apprehended already. We have the medical proof. So we can throw them under the bus, give them a lenient sentence, and then get away with the ICC shenanigan. And for that crime, she was placed under house arrest herself. She was fired from her position.
Right.
She became a pariah inside Israel. That's why you see the commander of the IDF inside the West Bank is a settler called Avi Bluth. He gave a talk a couple of days ago in which he said Israeli soldiers would never shoot as Jewish Israeli terrorists because of so-called societal consequences. You would become a pariah. Your own people would render you an outcast. So with that incident, Israel's second trick was to call that victim a Hamas Nakba terrorist. That means a Hamas elite force combatant.
Right.
But a few months after, Israel secretly released him to Gaza. And the only reason they released him is to prevent him from testifying in court against the rapists. So once he was released, the Israeli court said, the victim is not here anymore. We cannot take his testimony. Therefore, all soldiers are vindicated and all of them get to go home free. It was very basic trick. I managed to identify that victim. I managed to get to his full name, his location, etc. in Gaza. He lives terrified underground. He knows that Israel would go after him and murder him. That is basically on his mind every single day. Other prisoners, other Palestinian hostages that were in prison with him described the entire incident. And I verified 100% that this guy has zero affiliation to Hamas, none whatsoever. So it was just the simple label, throw at him and call him a Nakba. And that's why you found members of Knesset, rabbis, even the wives and the girlfriends of the rapists saying, so what that they raped a Hamas terrorist? It's not a big deal. And you had Israeli journalists saying they should have raped him with even more brutal tools. They should have gone medieval on him.
And there's also a lesson here in the way that international impunity empowers Israel here, because as Mohammed said, the only reason that the prosecutor was willing to go forward was fear of the ICC, because of this complementarity idea that says that as long as there is a functional court system domestically, then the ICC has no jurisdiction. And so she was thinking, like, ICC is coming for us. We need to do something to keep the ICC away. So let's do this. The counter argument to her from inside Israel was, ICC is not doing anything to us. We are going to be immune from this. You are being weak. You don't understand the power that we have against the ICC. Do not be afraid of them. And every time that faction in Israel has made that argument, they have turned out to be true, whether it's the ICC, whether it's the United Nations, more broadly, whether it's U.S. application of the Leahy laws or threats to withhold like this kind of weapon or something. Anytime when there's a factional debate inside Israel that somebody argues, do not worry about consequences, there will be no international consequences, that person has ended up being vindicated. And so then that drives and accelerates that faction to where it is now a supermajority. So then previously the people who were on the camp of saying, I support rape just as much as you do, but I just think tactically in this moment, we should do this small compromise. Those people then are discredited and they shift over to the camp of what used to be extremists, and they become mainstream, dominant, and now basically hegemonic, like facing no opposition.
Katie, sorry to interrupt, but I just had a quick question for both Ryan and Mohammed. I was just looking into it, and I'm sure you're both aware. This says the BBC, Israel is threatening to sue for libel action, and but claiming that the allegations in the article are without merit. And I'm just sitting here listening to you both speaking, and I'm like, well, with the video that's there, and then what Mohammed was saying about people making statements saying they need to go medieval and do more of that, how could they possibly seriously claim that this is without merit?
Hey, the author of this story is currently suing Dropsite News over an article that we published he's not suing Dropsite News, he's suing Owen Jones directly because it's easier to sue in the UK. He's losing the case. But he's the editor, so usually you wouldn't see his name on the piece. So that's interesting that like nobody else wanted to put their name on this piece. I don't think they're going to sue. If you notice Netanyahu's comment that he made, he said he has instructed his attorneys to consider legal action. There had been like leaked reports, then statements from different accounts, and then it was only finally that Netanyahu himself put out a statement that he put the word consider in there. And as soon as you see the word consider, the jig is up. Like, yeah, they're considering suing. They have no case. They will not sue. I suspect we won't hear anything about it after a few more days. A state can't sue, basically. It's basically impossible. Ariel Sharon tried to get around that by suing personally at one point, It was he lost. And then on top of that, it's true. Like a defense against defamation and libel is the truth. And so all you have to do is then,
right, prove it.
Allow investigators to look into the records, interview, let the International Committee for the Red Cross go in and interview detainees as is required under the Geneva Conventions, and then present that to a jury and see, how far they get. But it's not going to get anywhere near that. This is totally fake. They're not even considering it. Maybe they tasked one intern to look into it, but
maybe that Eyal guy, that pathological liar. What's his name?
Right.
Eyal, who you made a video about, Brad. How much do you guys have? I know we've gone a little over an hour. How much time do you guys have?
No, it's all right.
Okay.
I should go pretty soon, but I was late, so let me.
Oh yeah. You can't leave yet, Ryan. No, sadly, there's so much more to talk about, ranging from the evidence of people defending these rapes that then Israel is claiming didn't happen. We also have people doing stand-up comedy about this. And we also have a debate about whether or not dogs are physiologically capable of rape, because one of the things that's documented are claims of dogs participating in sexual violence of Palestinians. So I guess I would ask either of you to talk about that. I know that Mohammed, you collected some examples of this, but Ryan, because you have to go sooner, what are your comments on either of those issues, or anything else you want to say before you leave?
We know that, from, not the Nazi historical record, and also from the fascist Chilean historical record. We also know that the Israeli military was training Pinochet's forces, the very forces that were doing this in Chile.
By this, it means Ryan's referring to using dogs to rape people.
Right. We've had testimonies of this for a very long time, and now over the last couple of years, you've started to get people who are willing to say it on record. Other people who are willing to say that they've seen it, that they've witnessed it, and people can like Shahal Ben Ephraim or not. He speaks with sources. He spoke with two sources at Sdei Talom, one of whom had witnessed it, one of whom had heard about it. Like the
Israelis, you're talking about Israeli,
right? Israeli guards, right? Israeli guards. So it is also one of those things that is so barbaric that it makes the person who talks about it sound insane.
Right. Exactly.
I don't know if that's by design or if it's just a feature of it, but it is true. Like, I remember when I would talk about it 2 years ago or whatever, I would feel insane.
Right.
Because it's insane. It's
right.
genuine. It's so detached from what you can even conceive of to be basic humanity that you feel crazy just even talking about it. But there's an obligation to talk about it, because if the victims and the witnesses are willing to risk so much to stand up and say something about it, then we can overcome a little bit of embarrassment.
Right. And of course, the more of us speak about it, the less stigmatizable it becomes, right? The less fringe.
Yes, but also it's still insane. It's
of course, yeah.
Insane. Like, it will never be not insane.
Right.
And the idea that there are protests outside the New York Times about the reporting rather than protesters pouring into the streets of Tel Aviv demanding that this stop is insane. That's insane.
Or protests if we're going to stay in the United States. How about of course, this is so unrealistic, but imagine if people were upset. The people who are upset at the times we were reporting this were upset about the actual rapes and not the reporting of the rapes. I mean, this is like the U.S. corollary to the right to rape protests that broke out after they were trying to, as you guys referred to, detain or dare to investigate the rapists of the Palestinian hostage. We actually have footage of this. Let's just take it's very short, but you can see the kind of insanity of the people who are protesting outside of the New York Times. Kind of low energy. I mean, this is interesting. There are like two types of pro-Israel protests. One is like totally maniacal, where I know why it's low energy, because I was going to say their go-to is often wishing rape on people. That's why it's low energy, because they can't go to their go-to line, which is, I hope you get raped. Hamas would rape you. So they're kind of like left silent. It's so inconvenient for them.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, the Iranian monarchists also. I don't know if that's some kind of Zionist training talking points that they've shared with each other. But, well, Ryan, I know you have to go, so thank you so much. And Mohammed, thank you so much for staying on for a little bit more, because we have, yeah, of course. And thanks for everything you do.
Mohammed.
Same here. Great to be on the same call.
Mohammed, you have some amazing tweets where you just document. I thought we could look at these tweets. You document some examples of Israeli society just not even denying that this is happening. Let's take a look at this. Okay, so you tweet, anyone denying Israel's use of dogs to rape Palestinian hostages is also denying the Holocaust, because Nazis and Pinochet used dogs to rape their victims. So those who say it can't be done are engaging in anti-Semitism. Yeah, remember all the people who called people like us rape apologists would say "Me too," except for Jews. I don't know if you ever heard that. So this is I guess those people who are denying the that dogs can rape people are actually engaging in the "Me too," except for Jews, because I guess they don't believe the Jewish victims who talked about rapes committed by Nazi trained dogs. And here is you quote an IDF soldier bragging about it. I'm just going to, here we go. Oh, sorry. These are the quotes of the rape. So, of the Nazis, and in Pinochet's Chile. So, Klaus Barbie, a Nazi prisoner commander known as the Butcher of Lyon. Barbie's crimes are vast, but one particularly galling tactic is described by Judith Miller in One by One Facing the Holocaust. Barbie kept 2 German Shepherd dogs. One was trained to lunge and bite. The other was trained to mount naked women who had first been ordered on their hands and knees, a humiliation that could cut deeper than the whip, than having one's fingernails pulled out or one's nipples burned with cigarettes. And here's the description. And this is from an article by Zed Jelani, a piece by Zed Jelani. Zed goes on, the Nazis were not the only ones who used a form of torture that recruited a man's best friend. In Pinochet's Chile, sexual violence was common. Another German Shepherd was again deployed for this purpose. Quote, women were particularly targeted for sexual abuse, suffering rape, forced pregnancies, abortions, and sexual slur. A German Shepherd dog called Bolodia was trained to rape inmates. Female and male prisoners were also subjected to beatings, hangings, electric shocks, Russian roulette, asphyxia, and deprivation of sleep, among other torture methods. Prisoners called the secret detention center La Discothèque due to Pinochet's agents blasting loud music at all times. And then you have the IDF prisoner bragging. That's in there as well. Is that, do we have that one, Brad? Okay. So let me, I'll read this. Just in case. Okay. You showed up with a weapon. You showed up with a dog. This dog is Django. He's with me on every military activity, with me in the reserves. Django. He was in Gaza. Hilltop dog, we should say. That's what my mom calls me, by the way, Django. Yeah. Took care of some Nakbas in State Taman, did a lot. So here he is saying this dog, right, Django, took care of some Nakbas in State Taman, did a lot. And as we know, Nakbas is the term for the elite Hamas soldiers. And as we know, that member of Knesset who said it was legitimate to insert sticks into people's rectums said it was legitimate to do anything to Nakbas. Okay, so here we have an IDF guy saying on a talk show out loud that his dog took care of some Nakbas. And then don't say
that's the most instructive part is the end. They say don't say things like that. There is a video already referring to the rape video.
in State Taman, right? Right. So long story short, everyone laughs. Okay, hilarious. So that's one video where we have someone not only talking about using his dog to attack, if not rape, right, people. But that's not the only comedy that has been derived from this. Let's see. We have another recent video from a stand-up comedian. This is recent, right? It refers to the State Taman. Let's take a look at this.
Where do you serve? I was in the Navy, and they had me guarding terrorists.
And you are the guy with the iPhone that was shoved right up the terrorist's butt. Were you actually involved in that whole incident? You are the one who filmed it. He is the Ashkenazi fellow who filmed it. It is really not right what you are doing here, guys. Yalla, go away.
You were actually guarding the terrorists? Is it true they are kept blindfolded, sitting on the yard floor for the entire day? Not these ones. But not all of them, so there are ripe and unripe Nakba. How does that even work? How do you go about sorting them out, who is ripe or unripe, and how do you decide who gets forced down onto their knees? We have cut through much worse things. Suddenly you're revealing things here that would basically land you in The Hague or on a list. Even ahead of Bibi Netanyahu and Gallant, they'll shout, arrest him first, leave Bibi alone, arrest this guy. How can you justify punishing them so differently when they have committed the exact same acts?
Don't give out any information.
Who said that? Do not provide information?
I did.
It was you. Why would you do that? Are you acting as his personal lawyer now? Did you come here specifically to sabotage the entire show?
If he won't talk, how are we supposed to have fun? We'll get the info and enjoy ourselves. No need to stop him. He'll face trouble later, I'm sure.
But he's in the audience and no one knew? No, there's no one here. Is there someone here who is... I honestly don't even know how to put this into words. Traitors, are there actual traitors to this country right here? There are people who have done what? And what do you say? You are sitting in the dark. What is the absolute worst thing you've done to them? Come on now, come on. Make us blush just a little bit.
I exercise my right to remain silent.
That is really quite nice. I love it.
That is wonderful. The entire audience, those guilty of crimes against humanity, are all applauding. Wonderful.
Okay, so with that, what do you have to say about that?
Well, basically, there's two phases of Israel's systematic rape against Palestinians. 1948, rape was used as what was called back then the Israeli strategy of the whisper campaign. You would go and rape women disproportionately. You wouldn't rape men. You would go against women in front of their family members, or you murder their family members and rape them, and then let survivors spread the story so that nearby villages, neighboring villages and towns, people would just flee away, run. That is the hope of this strategy. It's hoping to achieve the maximum terror possible. That's why you see Ben Gurion saying in the video that you put up earlier, you need to kill women and children in this campaign. It is all terrorism. So that is the first tactic. It's something that Israeli prime ministers were proud of. Menachem Begin, the Israeli prime minister from the party that Netanyahu now hails from, was very proud to be a terrorist. He was very open about it. He was always bragging about it. Yitzhak Shamir, another Israeli prime minister, both of them were arguing that terrorism was perfectly fine for Jews, but not for Arabs. These were the verbatim quotes that they would put out. So that's the first element. The second phase is mainly around the first Palestinian Intifada in 1987. It was overwhelmingly nonviolent. It was a grassroots movement, labor strikes, unions trying to achieve economic independence, boycotting Israeli products, etc. And with that first Intifada, Israel tried to break the will of Palestinian activists. They realized that imprisoning and torturing them doesn't do the job, because the activists are basically very proud of the sacrifice they gave to the cause. So you would find Palestinians that are proud. It's the same in Ireland or in South Africa. You would find activists that would say, I was in prison for 20 years, for 10 years, for this cause, for the freedom fight. So Israel realized an alternative tactic. What if we make them do the absolute most unimaginable atrocities to themselves to break their will, that then they cannot brag about it to the Palestinian public to whip up some morale? So they started with rape. That's the obvious tactic. There are other tactics as well. So in the first Intifada, the IDF would take children, break their bones. The strategy was called breaking the bones. That was one strategy. The next level was to beat those kids up until you force them to bark like dogs, curse God, curse the Prophet Muhammad, call their own mothers whores, and basically you achieved the utmost humiliation. It's the same as in Romania under the dictatorship regime. You had basically people in prison being forced to eat human feces as a way of ultimately breaking their will. And it's something similar. You have people being raped systematically as a matter of procedure in Israeli dungeons to break their wills, to humiliate them, so that when they come out, they would keep their heads in shame. They would be too traumatized and too scared to share those stories, because the IDF would tell them explicitly, if you speak up about this, we're going to find you and kill you. That's the testimonies that you found in the Christoph article in the New York Times. So this is one issue to address here. The other is that after October 7th, you remember, Katie, Israel came up with all sorts of strategies, all sorts of atrocity propaganda, and they did a lot of polling data to see what sticks. And they found, okay, there was the comparison of Hamas to ISIS, where they explicitly said, don't compare Hamas to the Nazis, because people would compare us to the Nazis and then the comparison would be lost. Compare them to ISIS, call them Islamic jihadists. And they found that the best way to whip up support for Israel in the West is Islamophobia. That support for Israel would increase by 20 points if you say that those are jihadists that are coming your way after they're done with us, and we're the dam between those barbarians and civilization. So that was one tactic. But it didn't stick much. Islamophobia, of course, is still being fueled, but Hamas is ISIS. It crumbled when Israel negotiated a ceasefire with Hamas in November 2023, right, and then another one in January 2025, October 2025. You don't negotiate with ISIS. So that narrative crumbled. The second one that they found to be even more inflammatory is the issue with rape. You go around with Israeli or pro-Israeli protesters dressed up as wearing basically gray pants with blood on it, and you insinuate, look, those are just a representation of the Israeli women that are being raped in Gaza. There was an article in Haaretz about this. Back then, Israeli hostage families and the Israeli government would go on record and say Hamas kidnapped children to rape them. There's this friend of mine, Laura from the Jewish Forward, that went on a trip to Israel and watched that propaganda, the atrocity propaganda movie, the 47 minutes long movie that they assembled. And she wrote on Twitter something like that Israel told them, if you don't come and watch that movie, you will be kicked out of Israel. And she said, I'm Jewish, I'm traumatized. This is reminding me of concentration camps. I don't need to be traumatized in front of a camera. And they said, no, you have to watch it, otherwise you get kicked out. So she went to watch it. They put them in buses, and every couple of minutes, an Israeli military uniformed officer would walk in with a banner that says, Hamas told us they kidnapped babies to rape them. Literally. So they tried this. You had basically, even before they found any testimonies, the allegations started on October 7th itself. Before any testimonies, before any alleged witnesses, before any of this narrative, they started it from day one, along with the Hamas is ISIS. They found that it's perfectly inflammatory, and they kept drumming on this, and it was a successful strategy. If you ask any pro-Palestinian crowd, when did Israel murder the paramedics in Rafah or the World Central Kitchen workers, it wouldn't resonate much aside from people that are too heavily invested in this. If you ask the average people about this, they wouldn't even recall those events. If you ask, when was the last time you heard about rape, October 7th rape? Every day, every minute. It's meant to drive you insane. They will keep bombarding you with it whenever Israel is exposed for any atrocities, and October 7th rape is immediately released by the Israeli government or Israeli government affiliated NGOs or activists or propagandists, etc. So that's the main element why Israel panicked so deeply about the New York Times article. The idea there is that they saw it as the Bible of the liberals. Once it's there, it sticks. You cannot deny it. You cannot refute it. Right. So the demonstration in front of the New York Times today, it's basically more like I see it, I interpret it as a pro-rape demonstration. Those people are not there because they're concerned that this never happened. They know it happened because they saw it on video. They saw public polling that said 65% of Jewish Israelis support those rapists and call for dropping any criminal prosecution of them. They saw rabbis, government leaders, ministers, etc. bragging about it. It's not a secret. So they know it, and they want to provide a cover for it so that it continues. So it can be only described as a pro-rape demonstration. It's very similar to the one at this Daytime Man concentration camp.
Right, the right to rape protest, right, where they protested we also have, I mean, this is, again, I just want to show this because I think it's so important, but here's another funny video, apparently. This is a video featuring a dog on Piers Morgan. This is done by some guy whose name is like, what is it? Kosher Chutzpah or something, or Chutzpah Kosher. Anyway, let's take a look at this.
Let me be clear. He was practically begging for it. It was 100% consensual, 100%. And he enjoyed every second of it. Said I was better than a goat.
Okay, great. So funny, haha. Wow, that's really hilarious. Let's make fun of dogs raping people.
But here is the puzzling part. Israelis and the world know that Israel used dogs to murder Palestinians, that they unleashed dogs on dead Palestinian corpses to devour it. There is this Palestinian nonverbal autistic kid, where Muhammad Bahar, that the IDF unleashed a dog on him, and that kid never spoke a word in his life. He couldn't even bring himself a glass of water. He was entirely dependent on his family, and his first word in life to the dog that was murdering him is, "Please stop, my dear. Please stop, Habibi."
Remember that.
And then he died. There's an elderly Palestinian woman that was mauled by a dog the IDF unleashed on her. So, and it was published, I think, in The Guardian or the BBC or both of them. So those stories already in the media, already corroborated, of Israel using dogs to murder Palestinians. And still you have people denying that it's a possibility. The idea is basically like, as I wrote in that tweet, if you say that Israel didn't do this, that's one issue. We can debate this all you want. But if you say it's impossible for a dog to mount a human, that means denying the narrative or the survivor testimonies of Holocaust victims. And you see Israel willing to go as far as to throw doubt on the Holocaust in order to whitewash its reputation. And you saw it also with this Obama speechwriter that said that we have a problem with educating young people. Yep. She said
Sarah
that.
Hurwitz, I think is her name.
What's her name?
I think Sarah Hurwitz.
Yes, yeah, that's the one. She said we have a problem with educating our children about the Holocaust and the atrocities of the Holocaust, and never again. So once they see emaciated Palestinians starving, weakened, bombed, killed, they would be like, those are victims like the ones we learned about. We need to sympathize with them. And she proposes to dump Holocaust education into the garbage and instead focus on anti-Semitism, because never again turned out to be a curse on Israel. It's consistent. There's an Israeli professor, Amos Goldberg, that told me that Ben Gurion, Israel's founding father, was once asked about the Holocaust in 1948, and Israel had just unleashed genocidal acts on Palestinians, ethnic cleansing, destruction of entire villages, looting, rape, pillage, etc. So he said this. He said, "What's there to talk about?" When they asked him, "What do you think of the Holocaust?" He said, "What's there to talk about? It's people that died. Let's move on." Because he understood, if I start talking about atrocities of the Holocaust, a genocide, people might draw comparisons. This is counterproductive. So let's just throw shade on it, cover it up, put it in a shelf until we need it later.
Right. And Norman Finkelstein also talks about this. I mean, not that particular point, but he talks about how it wasn't until 1967 when it became a useful narrative, because Israel didn't want to talk about the Holocaust. And, you know, Israeli society would throw around the word soaps. That's what they refer to Holocaust survivors as, soaps. A reference to the myth that Nazis turned Jews into soap.
Well, basically, there is this Israeli extremist American rabbi, Kahana.
Meir Kahana,
Meir Kahana. He is the one that invented the saying the nice Jews are the ones that were killed in the Holocaust.
Right.
You deal with us now. And that the weak Jew is a stigma in Israel. Now it's a mainstream sentiment in Israel. You hear it from both left and right. You need to be strong, otherwise you will be devoured. And what Naftali Bennett would say, if you be merciful to the cruel, then you will be cruel to the merciful, and whatever. So the Kahana ideology, and Kahana in Israel was considered a terrorist, blacklisted, because one of his disciples was the one that murdered their prime minister, Yitzhak Rabin. So basically, his movement was blacklisted. It was completely terror listed in the US and Israel, and it was abhorred as insane, racist, genocidal extremist. Now the entirety of Israeli society has become Kahanists. There is an article in Haaretz, I think in the Hebrew version, I didn't see it in the English one, where it explicitly talks about this, that Kahana's ideas have now gone mainstream and that Israeli society as a whole internalized them very deeply. You have now a government led by those Kahanists. So Itamar Ben-Gvir, then this goes to the idea that how dare you accuse Israel of rape? Itamar Ben-Gvir has been convicted of multiple accounts of terror support because he's one of the disciples of Meir Kahane. He met his wife. His wife was a child at the time. He married her, I think, as a child. He met his wife on the grave of an Israeli terrorist, Baruch Goldstein.
Right, who was another Kahanist disciple.
Yeah. So Baruch Goldstein was this doctor that came from Brooklyn, moved to Hebron in the West Bank, then walked into a mosque and murdered all worshippers that he encountered. I think murdered about 29 people before people jumped at him and he died in the fight. So you had Itamar Ben-Gvir hanging a portrait of Baruch Goldstein in his house in the living room. You had him dressed up as Baruch Goldstein on multiple occasions. You had Itamar Ben-Gvir meeting his wife at the grave of Goldstein because both of them went there to put stones to praise him as a hero. And so that's one guy. The Baruch Goldstein biggest fan is now the Israeli minister in charge of the police. There's an Israeli Knesset member, the one that initiated the law for executing Palestinians only, death penalty for Palestinians alone. Her name is Limor Son Harmelech, and she's from Ben-Gvir's party. She's the deputy speaker of the Knesset. There's a video of her fundraising about $120,000 for an Israeli settler, Amiram bin Aluel, the settler that went and burned alive a Palestinian baby and his mother and his father and burned their entire house. So she went and fundraised $120,000 for that murderer. She went and visited him in prison. And that video was the most insane thing I've ever seen in my life. She talks while shivering, while shaking. She says, this guy is holy. He's saint. He's radiating with light. He's suffering for the people of Israel. I was very intimidated by his glorious presence. The guy that burned a baby and his family. Her spokesperson is a guy called Elisha Yerid. Elisha Yerid is an Israeli settler that stood in front of the grandfather of that baby and started dancing and singing, Eli is on the grill, Eli is on the grill. Eli was barbecued. So that's now the Israeli government. So you have those terrorist fanatics running the system where Palestinian hostages are held, and you think it's impossible for them to unleash atrocities on them? No, I think you're muted.
You're muted, Katie. I just wanted to pull up this an example from 1994 where Ben-Gvir was giving a speech describing the people that Muhammad was just speaking about, describing them as heroes.
Yeah, absolutely repulsive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? In fact, I mean, apparently the term "never again" was created by Kahana, but it also the origins of that term, and right now there is a fight about what that term means, because for Jews like me, it's so obviously never again for anyone. How could your takeaway from the Holocaust be, oh, actually, we're going to ethnically cleanse and genocide some people who had nothing to do with the Holocaust, right? We're not talking about like what should we do about Germans? It's people who had nothing to do with the Holocaust. And then other people, so you have Jews like me who see it as a call for opposing what's happening in Gaza right now. Then you somehow have Jews who think this is why we should be doing what we're doing. They would say why they should be doing. Except, no, I'm not a Jew. Someone told me on Twitter the other day, I'm not a Jew, I'm a communist, which is funny because I don't know if they know about the history of communism and Jews. But anyway, you know, it's a contested phrase. And it really, I think it's like the battle for the soul of Jewish identity, which if Israel wins, that is, I mean, a horrible thing for the entire world. But it's interesting that it appeared at a concentration camp, a liberated concentration camp, and it also appeared on literature from Kahana. So you see like the two kind of polar opposites from which this cry came. And And we have one more video I want to show of people sitting around and saying that rape is good. That's A4, Brad. And you posted this as well, Mohammed. I told my friends I don't give a rat's buttocks about what they do to a guy like that. This is the state I'm on. Why? Is that what you really think? Unequivocally, yes. Wait. I'll explain. Soldiers who are suspected in the criminal offense of rape of a cuffed prisoner, it doesn't interest you? Does the morality of our soldiers not interest you? By the way, they're not soldiers. In fact, they're not soldiers. They're criminals. Again, I don't give a rat's buttocks what they did to that Hamas man. I always remember, first of all, the only thing that is a problem for me here is that it's not a regulated policy of the state to abuse the detainees. And by the way, in the background on the left, is you can see the footage of the rape. Yeah, of what happened right before. Because first of all, they deserve it, and it's great revenge that we need to give them. And secondly, maybe it will also serve us as a little more as a deterrent. That is the moment the other side, who we need to remember, Josh, we need to remember it well.
I'm sorry to interject, Katie, but where he says this here, where he says, first of all, they deserve it, and it's great revenge that we need to give them. Correct me if I'm wrong, but these people have not gone through any sort of judicial process to determine what they're guilty of or anything like that. Like, this is psychotic.
Oh, yeah. That is the moment the other side, who we need to remember, Josh, we need to remember it well. This is why it's going to be a deterrent. And never lose our focus or cool down. These people tied 30 of our daughters on trees on the 7th of October. And they did to them acts that are not less severe. I don't even want to make a comparison.
And so is he referring to like the debunked claims of mass sexual violence on October 7th, Katie?
Yes, right, Mohammed?
He is referring to the Rami testimony from the Sheryl Sandberg documentary.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Rami is the guy that said that he found the bodies tied to trees, and then Israeli media itself said that that guy is a serial pathological liar.
Right, and he cited in this report.
Yeah, repeatedly.
Okay. Severe in an extreme way. So first of all, they deserve it. It's a very appropriate revenge. It's just a shame that we don't do it in an institutionalized way as part of regulation for torture of prisoners. Because then the next guys who think about doing another October 7th will say, do you see what they're doing to them in Israel?
So this guy, like in a sport coat, is on their mainstream TV lamenting that rape is not in sport
coats, but the guy in the red shirt, right? Yeah. Lamenting that rape is not official policy.
So this is Israel's Channel 12. This is the liberal centrist official TV of Israel.
Yeah.
My God.
So this is supposed to be the most rational debate.
And this guy is a journalist or a the guy in red? Okay, well, either way, yeah.
Yep. But in Channel 12, you would have people like Barak Ravid as a reporter.
Right.
So it's not some sort of a lunatic fringe media outlet.
Right.
It is the main Israeli national TV channel.
Let's keep watching that. Sorry, everyone. First of all, I'm sorry that these things are even being aired. Because what Schlesinger is doing here is simply incitement to violence. Is Schlesinger the person who released the video? Yeah, right.
No, that's the other guy with orange and blue.
So yeah.
Oh, he's referring to. I see. He's saying. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Is this like Muhammad? Is this person in the white shirt then kind of like the counterpoint to the guy in the? Got it.
Yeah. Incitement to violence. Oh no, really? Real incitement? This man has just expressed support to the criminal offense of rape being committed on prisoners. Horrible terrorists, Hamas men who want to kill you too, and to abduct you and F you like. I'll emphasize the point, Schles. I think it's Schlesinger, right? I think he's not. No one here is. I think Josh isn't trying to defend this scum. Really? I think the question is it appropriate for an IDF soldier under any circumstances to insert a sharp object into a person's buttocks? When we are talking about Hamas man, a man who burned children here, who raped women, that his whole idea is to take each and every one of us, to throw us in the sea and commit the worst possible acts on us. That's the revenge they deserve to get. And more than that, it needs to be a deterring force. Let's give Josh a moment. I'm sad that Josh's words, wait, he didn't say anything. How you already said he didn't say anything yet. Oh, wait, let him speak. He said that it's really a shame. Rewind a little bit. He said that it's really a shame that people. Sorry, everyone. Okay, you'll pause it, Brad, not me. He said it's really a shame that people say things like that on the air. But I think it's sad that people say things like you do on the air. Weakening the nation, the enemy sees it. He sees how flaccid you are and how much you want the Hague again. So no, he was sorry. So actually, yeah, he was saying, the guy moderating was like, no, it's not like this guy saying it's maybe not good to rape prisoners. It's defending these Hamas scum or whatever. He's just saying that maybe it's not good policy to rape them.
So one of them is saying this. The other one is saying, yes, you need to rape them and you need to make it official regulated policies. Yeah. But Katie, guess what happens to both of them when they go home? Which one is welcomed as a hero by his own neighbors and family, and which one is outcast? I'll give you multiple examples, or just a simple example. Israeli captives that came out of Gaza, they were supposed to be treated as heroes. They endured captivity in Hamas's dungeons. There are all those stories in Haaretz about how those captives would come back, especially the women, that they would come back pregnant. There was a story that the Israeli government told that Hamas was dressing up those female captives as dolls, that they turned them into sexual slaves, that they're raping them in caves. Gaza doesn't have any caves, by the way. So they came up with all those medieval barbaric narratives. And then the newspaper itself, Haaretz, said that some of those families and the Israeli government would exaggerate details about those stories in order to create sympathy or urgency for the release of the captives. But basically, some of those captives came back. They're supposed to be the ultimate victims in Israel. Each one of them became a sort of a reality TV star because they're talked about every day on Israeli media, people on the street daily. And I think one of those captives said something like she was well treated in Gaza and that she was not tortured. And then she started to get death threats and to get disavowed and to be called a Hamas Nakba terrorist herself and to get all kind of hate from Israeli society, that she decided to live basically underground. There are many other captives like this. There's one former hostage that said something like, we need a ceasefire in Gaza, was called a traitor immediately on the spot, was condemned, denounced, etc. And those are the heroes, those are the captives, those are the hostages. So what would happen to a pundit on TV that would come and say this? Once they go home, they would be lynched by their neighbors, family, society, etc. They would be outcast. So this is number one. The other thing about those, basically the idea of a debate about rape being so open in Israel is because they don't fear any consequences. Even the journalist advocating for this criminal offense on TV, he knows nothing will happen to him. Because ever since October 7th, the ICC said to the Israeli government to investigate government leaders, public figures, musicians, artists that have made genocidal statements. The Israeli government opened an investigation against a couple of members of Knesset, and those investigations were closed immediately. It went nowhere. Since October 7th, there's only 2 Israeli soldiers that were ever held accountable for atrocities in Gaza. Ready for this? One of them was for microwaving a frog, a living frog, and microwaving it alive. And the judge sentenced him, I think, to about 20 days in military prison, only 20 days. And the judge wrote in the ruling that when a soldier puts a living frog in a microwave and burns it alive, that displays a cruelty or a tendency towards cruelty that basically constitutes risks towards other humans. The judge is a complete lunatic, nut job. There's another case of 2 soldiers that were sentenced, I think, similarly to 20 days in military prison because they cooked sausages on Shabbat in the military kitchen. So they violated the Shabbat Orthodox ruling against using fire on Shabbat. So they were sentenced to 20 days in prison. Nobody else was ever sentenced to a single day in prison over 2.5 years of genocide that is live streamed, that is posted by those soldiers. So they know that they can walk with a tree.
Oh my gosh. Well, by the way, Mohammed, that guy is named Yehuda Schlesinger, the guy who was defending rape, but lamenting that it wasn't official policy. And he is an Israeli journalist and political commentator, and he works for Channel 14.
He kind of strikes me as being, and I don't know if you know this, Mohammed, but he strikes me as the sort of person that would have the same ideological, set of beliefs or stances as someone like Ben Gvir. Do you think that is likely, or would that be a valid observation? Or
Yep, yeah, absolutely. It would be in that category. But people in the opposition are not far away from this. You have Yair Lapid, the head of the Israeli opposition. So that's the liberal, enlightened, secular, center-left guy. And that guy was asked explicitly about whether Israel has a right to occupy and annex land in Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Turkey. And he said absolutely. And that Israel's borders are the Bible's borders, which extends between Iraq and Egypt and everything in between. And he said that the only problem is that the geopolitical reality at the moment doesn't allow us to get away with this. So it's a possibility in the future. You have Yair Golan, that is the head of the most left-wing Israeli Zionist party at the moment, the Democrats. That is a merger of Labor and Meretz. Meretz is the most left-wing, Labor comes second. And that guy advocated openly for the full starvation of every living soul in Gaza to death unless they agree to release the hostages and surrender immediately. He said it in an interview with Yedaot Ahranot, Israeli newspaper. He said, I think it's fair that we should starve Gaza. We should tell Gazans, you will starve to death until you do 1, 2, 3. The same guy was bragging about taking Palestinians in the West Bank as human shields. And he was interviewed by, I think, Christiane Amanpour, and she asked him about this particular statement, bragging about taking human shields, that he took himself human shields and starving all of Gaza. And then he dismissed it as history, and that we should not dwell on history. We should focus on what comes next. You have other people like Ehud Olmert. So Ehud Olmert is the guy that said there's ethnic cleansing in Gaza, there's concentration camps, there's war crimes, crimes against humanity. All of it sounded great, until you actually meet the guy and hear him talk about the topic and hear him say, our brave warriors are fighting a just war in Gaza, but Netanyahu is to blame for abusing it.
Right.
Like at the moment, what you have is that the rut has become so deep. You have people like Avi Shlaim or Ilan Pape that are saying that Israel as a society has become unhinged after October 7th, that they need a reality check to pull them back from the abyss. It is very frightening when you have a society with 500,000 people that actively took part in a genocide, and it's not full-time soldiers. Those are reservists, predominantly reservists. So it means that once they go home, it'll be your doctor, your pharmacist, your grocery store guy, your kid's nurse, your kid's teacher, your neighbor, your brother, your mother, your family member. And you're surrounded by this in a society. So you have one of 2 options. Number 1 is to live with the guilt and try to do something about it, but that is too weak. In Israel, they call them khnoun. Khnoun as like meek, mild, too weak, traitor, leftist. There's a story in Haaretz about soldiers that came back from Gaza and said that they suffered moral injury for what they did there. And then the IDF dismissed it as identity crisis or identity injury. That if you suffer any feeling of guilt, it's because you're not Zionist enough, because you're not Israeli enough. That's how the IDF dismissed it. And then the second option to live with this is to come up with a narrative that wraps your brain and allows you not to think about any of those victims. As you saw in the video, all of them are Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. You have the Israeli minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. He used to say death to the Arabs. There's an article in the New Yorker that even said that he would send teenagers to graffiti death to the Arabs on Palestinian homes and puncture vehicle tires, slash windows, etc., and attack the UN headquarters in Jerusalem. That's the allegations in the New Yorker. They called him the Minister of Chaos. That's the headline of the article. So he used to say death to the Arabs, and then he got into legal trouble for this. And he was convicted on counts of support of terrorism, racism, because of such statement. So he learned you need to say death to the terrorists. And there's a video of him at a rally in which his supporters are chanting something like death to the Arabs, death to the Arabs. And he said, no, death to the terrorists with a wink.
Right.
And that's what you see on the media. Death to the Hamas Nakba militants.
Right.
And you get away with it.
Right.
Wow. So it's like, and I this is the only comparison I can think of to make, but it sounds to me like the left versus right here. It's like you've got the generic Nazi, and that's the left, or a full-blown like SS officer.
Oh, right. Like rank and file Nazi versus elite.
Like, my gosh.
If I make that comparison, I'd be accused of
Yeah, no.
That's why I am making it. Just me.
Yeah.
But that is Norman Finkelstein made a good point, and I agree with it. He said if a Jew compares Israel's actions to Nazis, that is a compliment. That is support for Palestinians. That's solidarity. But for other people to do this might be insensitive to survivors of the Holocaust. So I refrain from engaging in this.
Okay.
But you have a long tradition of Israeli leaders, soldiers, commanders that compare Israel's actions to Nazis. You have a long, vivid literature on this. I put it in that video that you shared part of it earlier, where you have soldiers saying, I felt like a Nazi in there, or we were the Nazis and they were the Jews. There's an article in Haaretz about also moral injury amongst Israeli soldiers. And one of them is saying that we went and did all of those atrocities, and I felt that we were the Nazis and they were the Jews, and I suffered guilt because of it. So you will find a long body of literature on this. But for me, not my area to make that.
Yeah, I actually made a video about that for Double Down News, which I can show later on, where I read all those things. Hold on, see.
Well, and just into your point too, I think you had said a few minutes ago, Mohammed, about you had said something about like kind of like checking Israel. I can't remember your exact words, but like, you know, I don't know. Basically, what I heard from that was like they need to be stopped because they will not stop themselves.
Yeah, of course. Like, there's no way. Yeah. And I, another, if I may just jump back into that comparison question, but yeah, that's totally true, Brad. I mean, there's no way they're going to have like a moral reckoning or a wake up call when it's so endemic in society, the support for it. It's not, and sadly, it's not like a divided society. And to the extent that there's opposition to Netanyahu, it has nothing to do with his, I mean, significant opposition. You have a couple people here and there. You probably have dozens of Israelis, right, who are opposed to maybe hundreds, a couple hundreds who are opposed to what is being done to the people in Palestine.
I know all of them on a first name basis.
Yeah.
That's how few they are.
And most people who don't support what Netanyahu does, it's because of corruption, judicial overhaul. But I did in this video, which we can play later, but you do have people, you have quotes. Let's see. This is from a Haaretz article. I felt like a Nazi. It looked exactly like we were actually the Nazis and they were the Jews. That's what Mohammed just referred to. And the irony is, of course, that if you compare what Israel is doing to the Nazis, you are an anti-Semite. But Israel loves, except then they thought it was a little awkward. But there are many times that they said they're Nazis. These are the Nazis. These are the new Nazis. Lindsey Graham compared them to Nazis. Naftali Bennett compares them to Nazis. People in sitting at the UN, ambassadors compare them to the Nazis. And that's a violation of the IHRA. So, and Wallace Shawn, who's Jewish, said that at least the Nazis had decency to hide what they were doing.
Right.
they don't document it with glee on video.
Yeah, like they had the good sense not to like brag
right
and smile about it.
Yeah,
That's
they
what we were told. That's October 7th.
Oh, sorry.
There was this article by Mr. Potato Head, what's his name, Douglas Murray, in which he says something
That's
like...
an insult to Mr. Potato Head. That's an insult to potatoes everywhere, but yeah.
If you put the two side by side, you'll see the comparison. But Humpty Dumpty, maybe. But basically, he makes the argument that Hamas and Palestinians are worse than Nazis because the Nazis did not express such glee at the murder of their victims. And I heard right after that article, I heard from a senior German diplomat, so the descendants of the Nazis, and he said, he brought it out of the blue. He said, this article struck me as absolutely bananas. Like, this guy didn't know anything about Nazis at all. He did not familiarize himself with any literature on the Holocaust. It sounded to him that it was extremely lunatic, that like intellectually vacuous. But basically what you have is, again, another one of those, every confession, every accusation is a confession, where you have basically Israelis expressing immense satisfaction, glee, documenting it. Norman Finkelstein would bring the point up about the Nazis destroying the gas chambers before the Allies liberated the concentration camps so that they would bury the evidence. In Israel's case, you have basically soldiers posting it on the internet 24/7 and bragging about it because it is their easiest way to get intimate relationships, to get in a romantic entanglement.
That's a very interesting angle that, I mean, I'm sure other people have heard that before, but just me personally, this is the first time that I'm hearing that angle of doing those things essentially to get laid.
We should show that tweet, actually.
There's an article that says explicitly that one soldier went to hook up with a woman and he didn't serve in Gaza or something like this. And then he went and borrowed the military uniform from a friend of his that served in Gaza. And she asked him, she said, I would only sleep with you if you come home to my place with a military uniform on. And then they bring a psychologist to provide some psychoanalysis of what is behind this. And they say that Israelis felt sort of emasculinated by October 7th. It reminds them of the weak European Jew, and they needed to remind themselves that they are the sabra, the cactus in the desert, that they are ruthless superhumans. And therefore, when you bring a soldier that just tortured and murdered babies and children to your home to have sex with, it would make you feel sort of invincible and all-powerful. That was the psychological analysis provided there. There was another article, I think, in Wala, an Israeli newspaper in Hebrew, about soldiers that would come back from Gaza and experience PTSD or severe sort of schizophrenia or any other kinds of mental disorders. And they brought a psychiatrist to provide analysis. And he didn't say it's because of the horrors they experienced. He said this, he said, those soldiers in Gaza felt like gods. They were controlling everything. They were in charge of life and death. They felt very important. They felt a huge meaning, huge purpose. You can decide who lives and who dies. And then you come back to Israel and you're a nobody. You're on the street and nobody knows who you are. You don't have any of those powers anymore. So you can't cope with it anymore. So either you go and join the reserves or you develop depression because you can't murder people anymore.
Well, I have, one second, sorry. I'm just looking something up. I have some quotes that in this video that I read. So these are quotes from Israelis. It is justified and in fact essential to learn from every possible source. The commander's obligation is to analyze and internalize the lessons of earlier battles, even however shocking it may be, even how the German army fought in the Warsaw Ghetto. So you have an Israeli soldier saying that we have to learn from what Germans did, what Nazis did to the Warsaw Ghetto. Then you have another Israeli soldier who said, I felt like a Nazi. It looked exactly like we were actual Nazis and they were the Jews. And we also have the quotes from people who are happy to compare Hamas, which we know is in most cases often just a fill-in shorthand for Palestinians for these people. So let's see. The Minister of Heritage, Amichai Eliyahu, labeled Palestinians Nazis and their assistants. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich lamented during an interview on the radio that, quote, there were 2 million Nazis in Gaza who want to slaughter, rape, and murder every Jew. Heritage Minister Amichai Eliyahu said Palestinians, we wouldn't hand the Nazis humanitarian aid, so comparing them to Nazis. Netanyahu called Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, modern Hitler. And then, we don't even have time to read all of them because we'd be here all day.
But then again, based on that, then you don't see any people accusing them of being, of Islamophobia or anti-Islam or whatever. Like, whereas when they claim anti-Semitism or whatever, if you,
yeah, of course,
comparison to the other way.
There's 2 points here. Number one, the issue about, those Gazans are savages who want to kill all of us. That's literally what Himmler said about Jews that he exterminated. He said, we are killing people who otherwise would have killed us.
Exactly.
And
right.
we did it without a malice in our hearts, without hard feelings.
Yeah.
It was Norman Finkelstein that uploaded this speech a few years ago. So there is this one. Basically, the other one, how do you stop Israel's descent into madness? Well, one idea is the one that Israel's own founding father, David Ben-Gurion, said. He said only the death penalty would deter Jews from terrorism against the Arabs. That's literally in Haaretz as a headline. Only the death penalty would be the deterrent against Jews killing, or Israeli Jews in that case, murdering Arabs and carrying out atrocities.
Right, and now they're taking away they're having the death penalty only for Palestinians.
And not just only for Palestinians, they're having it as the automatic default sentence within 90 days with no appeal in a military tribunal, a kangaroo court, where they would not only take the accused alleged killer, but they would take, quote, any person that contributed to it by incitement or order or directing someone to kill an Israeli. So what it means in practice, if Israeli settlers launch another pogrom, they launch those daily on the West Bank, if they go and burn an entire village and one survivor from that village throws a rock and it hits an Israeli settler in the head and he dies, that person would be murdered. The death sentence would be applied to them. But the people that went and burned down an entire village, none of them would be touched because they're Jewish.
The article I showed you earlier about from the BBC about them threatening to sue the New York Times, within that article it even said those like 5 IDF soldiers that are on CCTV camera, they dropped all their court system dropped all the charges against them. Nothing happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I will. Mohammed, I want to thank you so much. Anything else you want to say before you leave? But please come back on. We should do it like a monthly check-in with you if you will grace us with your presence.
I'd love to. Last thing is basically Israel just bombed Gaza a few minutes ago and killed a top Hamas commander, the very top person in charge of the military brigades. And that person, Izzuddin Haddad, was in charge of enforcing and maintaining the ceasefire because he was the only surviving top commander in the Qassam brigades, commanding respect and having what is perceived inside Hamas as charisma. So he's the one that told all of the Hamas members to stand down and abide by the ceasefire, although Israel violated it over 1,500 times and killed almost 900 people. So Israel just killed him in a strike on a building in central Gaza, and then another strike on a moving vehicle to prevent any rescue. There is another Israeli path that is being progressed as we speak. It's basically what is called the disarmament plan for Gaza. So under the Trump plan, the ceasefire plan, peace plan, whatever you want to call it, the board of peace, it was supposed to have a process of what is called decommissioning offensive weapons. What that means is that you don't surrender, you don't capitulate, you don't hand everything you have to Israel, but you would lock it up in warehouses. A strict policy of no production, no use, no display of any weaponry whatsoever, mutual cessation of hostilities, a political process, and once that process is concluded, the weapons are destroyed. And hopefully it's concluded with a Palestinian state. That is what is implied in the Trump plan. Israel has now offered Hamas an alternative proposal, and the proposal reads thus. It says, surrender, capitulate, hand over every single weapon you have, down to pistols, nail clippers, tasers, pepper sprays, all of it, unilaterally, unrequitedly. And after we send an independent commission in Gaza to confirm and verify that all of Gaza is fully defenseless, fully weaponless, and doesn't have any capacity to fend off an Israeli attack, we will start withdrawing from Gaza. So
they would then just bomb it.
Yes, exactly. It'll make it much easier to kill people there. And they say explicitly that after that disarmament is completed, Israel would withdraw by day 250. So you become fully defenseless, fully weaponless, sit down like lame ducks waiting for your slaughter until Israel decides to withdraw. And that is the plan that they delivered. That's literally the plan. And they delivered it with this clear ultimatum. If you don't accept this plan as it is, Israel will be absolved of all of its obligations under the Trump deal and would get a free hand to resume military operations in Gaza. So as we speak, Israel is building up towards resuming the genocide there. Not that the genocide has stopped, but it's building up towards resuming it back to full force, full scale. They even said, the IDF put plans that explicitly said they would bomb Gaza 100 times more aggressively now that there are no Israeli captives in there.
Right.
So they can bomb it indiscriminately. And that's where things are going. You had Avigdor Lieberman from the opposition, head of an opposition party called Israel Betona, and he came out a couple of days ago and
to
said,
the right, though, right? Of Netanyahu. Yeah.
He's sort of center right. He called for ethnic cleansing or land swaps between Israel and the West Bank and sending a lot of Israeli Arabs into the West Bank. And he's a lunatic in many ways. Yeah. But basically that guy came out and said Netanyahu will start a war right before the elections to try to influence the way it would go. I heard from other Israelis that said Netanyahu cannot head towards elections without having one front open. So now that Iran is shut down, Hezbollah is half shut down, Gaza is the window that he would open next. And it's only a matter of time.
Well, I wanted to show one more thing. Thank you for sharing that. And one more thing, just because I think it's important to warn people against how the same people who lied us into the Iraq war, for instance, lied about WMDs, are lying about Gaza and Israel and Palestine. And this is, of course, the great, being sarcastic, here is David Frum, a Canadian neocon who helped get the West into the Iraq war. Meanwhile, the Jewish rape dog hoax has been refuted, not because it's a slur against Jews, but because the American Kennel Club attests it's an impossibility for dogs. So I asked him, can you share where the Kennel Club attests it's an impossibility for dogs to rape? Because as you will see below, their vice president says they have not. Because Isha Kirshaswamy tweeted that she had contacted them, the Kennel Club, and they said, we have not and are not even sure why we are being brought into this conversation. Yeah. So not surprising, the guy who lies about WMDs also lies about dogs and rape. But Mohammed, again, thank you so much for coming on, and let's definitely bring you on soon.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for coming on. Great. Now, don't go anywhere, guys, because we actually have another guest for you. That was an amazing segment. We are bringing on another guest from you. Let's see. Let me make sure the guest actually has the link. Now, this is someone who, Brad, can you share the link with our upcoming guest? And I will also give you his email. And the reason, and this is someone who was almost fired by his university. We can call this segment, and now for some good news. He was almost fired from his university over his, caring about Palestinians, for instance, but he wasn't. So this is after all that terrible stuff that we just heard. And that's, again, it's like such an understatement. But we are going to be bringing on Idris Robinson, who is a professor at Texas, a philosophy professor. And we're just sending him the link right now. And if he needs it on email, Brad, this is his email. But I would like to harass people into, if they haven't already, please do like the stream. Also, please do subscribe. We are at, I forgot to bring this up, we are at 450,000 subscribers, which is amazing. Please also make sure you follow Mohammed. We put his Twitter handle in there, but we'll link to it in the description. Sorry. And also, I want to announce that we are going to be bringing on Ali Abunema on Tuesday night, who will be talking about, he does a very meticulous debunking of the claims of the Israeli mass rape campaign. And he's also his Electronic Intifada is a wonderful site. Yeah. But while Brad is bringing in our next guest, and Brad, feel free if you need to call him. Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know if you feel free and say no, Katie, but I wanted to kind of counter that horrible comedian clip that we had played earlier. I had thought we could counter it with like a 30-second,
Great.
what I think is
Judah
a,
Friedlander, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So yeah. So not all Jewish. Hold on. I'm going to frame this with not all Jewish comedians. And we should get Judah Friedlander back on the show. Actually, that would be a really interesting discussion to have some comedians to talk about this pathological, like, comedy for evil as opposed to comedy for good. And then, yeah, he actually has a really funny joke about.
Yeah. So this is like where he's asking the crowd, where are you from?
Right.
Where? Israel. Cool. Where in Palestine are you from?
Same question, different night.
Any other country?
Israel.
Where?
Here, Israel.
Where in Israel?
Right here.
Yeah. This is not Israel here. So I'm from right here in Israel. Wow, no wonder why there's so much conflict with Palestine. Like, yeah, everywhere we go is Israel. Doesn't matter. We build settlements down here. Yeah, that's Israel. We take a plane to New York. Hey, that's Israel too. Okay? Wherever we go, it's fucking Israel. Okay.
Brad, if you want to call our guest, our incoming guest, I will play a video of the Knesset member who's defending. Sorry, guys, the Knesset member who's defending the sexual abuse. So yeah, I'll
all right, and that's queued up as A10. But
I'll play it. Why don't you? How about I play this and you can call him to make sure everything's good with his setup and that he's selected the right stuff.
Okay. All right.
Okay, great. Okay. And by the way, again, I'm not above this. Please do like the stream, not for my own validation, but because it really helps the stream. It helps people come see this. And it's so important for people to hear this story. And I'm pretty sure this is getting suppressed because not only the perspective, but also on this, it's such a, it's a sensitive topic. So, and also it would be great if we could get some Patreons, even if it's just at the $1 a month. I know that some of you out there can afford to pay $12 a year to support the show. And I want to thank some of our latest Patreon supporters. So Lily Coy, thank you so much for joining, for becoming a Patreon supporter. Alice, thank you so much for joining. Poul, P-O-U-L, thank you so much for joining. Duncan, thank you so much for joining. Ray, thank you so much for joining. Hal, thank you so much for joining. Yeah, those are our most recent joiners. So thank you again. You do make this show happen, and I'm so grateful. So here's that member of the Knesset who's going to be asked about whether or not it's legitimate to insert sticks into people's rectums. Okay, but there is an incident right now in State Taman. Remember, State Taman is that prison. Where the military police came to arrest soldiers who were guarding the Nakba terrorists, right? So what they're saying here is the military police came to arrest the soldiers who were accused of rape, right? And Nakba is what they call like the elite Hamas soldiers. And as Brad rightly pointed out, these are not people who ever had a trial or anything. And Israel, of course, likes to use military, indefinite, what's the term? Administrative detention, which is where they don't even have to charge you and they can keep you indefinitely. Okay, so. The insanity that our country is having this story, the insanity that our country is having around this story is crazy. And we need to stop it. I think that we need to set a personal example here. So is he going to set the example that prison guards shouldn't rape Palestinian hostages? And I say now, and I call on my coalition friends to do the same. I will stand up and I will leave this place. And I will not vote for anything until this story and this insanity, that there is someone in the prosecutor's office who thinks that it is possible to come and arrest soldiers for things they are doing. Hold on. They are doing to the Nakba, the Qassam Brigade's terrorists, is not over. We cannot continue as usual. And then someone interrupts and saying, to insert a stick in a person's rectum, is that legitimate? And he says, the guy who is speaking says, shut up. To the guy who brings up the rectum point, he goes, shut up. And then he answers the question, yes, if he is Nakba, Hamas, everything is legitimate. Everything. You know what these people did? There are things you don't do. Okay, and that's someone pushing back about things you don't do. But this guy, this member of the Knesset, is not upset that there were rapes. He's upset that there was an attempt to hold the rapist accountable. So that is the the most moral army in the world exists in that context, and the only democracy in the Middle East. All right, so we are really excited to be bringing on to the show our next guest. Again, it is encouraging. We need to have some good news every now and then. And we are excited to be bringing on Idris Robinson, who is a philosopher from the New York hinterlands. For over a decade, he has written extensively on crisis and revolt. He is the author of The Revolt Eclipses Whatever the World Has to Offer. And he's currently an assistant professor of philosophy at Texas State University. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Idris Robinson.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Hi.
Hey, appreciate you having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining. I'm going to put your last name in there so you are more findable for people.
Okay. All right.
Not hopefully for the people who try to get you fired, but tell us about what just happened to you, because there's so many examples of cancellations, of people getting fired. We had Mara Finkelstein on the show. Right. She was fired over her comments, a tenured professor who happens to be Jewish. Mm-hmm. We have people being deported or attempts to deport them. So tell us about what happened to you, what your crime was, and what your near punishment was.
Yeah, so it's a long story, and just cut me off whenever, but in 2024, I believe July 2024, I gave a talk with a comrade of mine who we went to 67, or the state known as Israel, and some parts of Palestine. In 2023, we went there in the summer. And, we kind of stayed in touch after October 7th happened. We had been developing these ideas, and we thought we'd give a talk on them at the Anarchist Book Fair in North Carolina. So he wasn't able to make it, and I must have talked for about 5 minutes. And, there was these three haggard people who just blended in, and eventually someone in the crowd said, hey, they're live streaming you. These are Zionists. And people asked him to stop. A fight broke out. I was pushed out of the back of the library where I was giving the talk. And I went about my life as normal. I had a child. I did all these things like usual for a whole year. I gave a talk about a year later in 2025 with the same sunglasses on. I don't know if this, and my face is floating around Twitter. I don't know if it had anything to do with it. But the next day, these strange calls started coming into the philosophy department, and they were like, hey, Idris, they're getting these calls. And it turned out that they had figured out I was a professor at Texas State, and a huge online campaign was made calling for my firing, calling from the call campaign that consisted of not only the philosophy department, but the administration of the university, as well as probably all the way up to the governor's office. I was put on administrative leave immediately. And then about a month later, things went on kind of normal again in the summer. And then I got a letter saying that my contract would no longer be renewed. Immediately before that, I had gotten perfect reviews. And I always say, I never get perfects in anything, right? And then the one time I get it, it doesn't matter. So, I gotten perfects in service, research, and teaching. And I'm like, okay, I didn't even know until we looked it over and we saw that they had just negated all that and given me the pink slip. So time goes on. We sued the university, and a federal judge, a Trump-appointed judge, I believe, ruled in my favor. And I've been reinstated for at least a year or until the trial, happens. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So here we are.
Wow. Well, and of course, there's the fact that this even had to happen, that you had to sue this. But what can you tell us about what is kind of been buried in this conversation, which is, of course, what you wanted to say about Palestinian resistance.
Okay, good. Yeah.
And since today's the Nakba Day, I think it's especially relevant.
Right, and I don't want to do a plug for my book, but I will a little bit here.
Yeah.
The last 2 chapters of my book are about Palestine, so I encourage people to read that. Like, these are my considered thoughts on the issue and on the topic. And the other thing I'd suggest people check out is the Reverend Reeve channel. It's Adi Kalain, is the person I went to 67 with and to Palestine with, and he's done these video essays. He's done 2 video essays on Gaza. So, and a lot of my ideas are fused with his and that. The main point that we were trying to get across there is that, of course, a genocide occurred. There are victims of the genocide, but there's another side of this we wanted to put forward, that after 75 years of, consistent resistance against one of the most brutal surveillance states in the world, there's a lot to learn from Palestinians, and they shouldn't just be considered as objects and victims, but subjects with agency. And basically the talk was on what lessons can we learn from the resistance, and how does that inform the rest of the world? And at this point, I think, I'm thinking of this quote by the Palestinian prisoner who was just released recently. He says, the keffiyeh is now a global symbol of freedom, right? And we have a global movement based off of this struggle. And, we have a prime example of a struggling people who can bring the struggle forward. And that's what basically we're trying to say, that they've given a paradigm for us to base our fight on.
Well, anything else that you want to say about resistance in general? I mean, since you're a philosopher and an academic. I mean,
yeah. Well, one thing that didn't get out. One thing that didn't get out also that I'd like to point out too is Yard and Katz wrote an article recently for Counterpunch, right?
Yeah.
And one of the interesting ironies of the whole situation was that I was totally, vilified on the internet, on these right-wing sites and Zionist sites. And, and a lot of it was like, oh, he supports terror and, he's violent. But it turned out, now that the surveillance footage got released, that, the people who were leading this campaign were actually engaged in, violence against people who were completely passive, and also like kids. Like, there were a lot of young people at the talk, right? So you have this like bald kind of wingnut freak just kicking this child, right? And somehow this narrative got turned around where, I became the villain of the story. But, there's a lot that he did that's quite, terrible in physical reality. I only said things, he did.
I do have that footage, by the way.
Yeah, it's on the Counterpunch site, and then it's uploaded on archive. It's on the Counterpunch article, and it's uploaded on archive somewhere, on archive.org somewhere. Something like the IR defense, something, I don't know, but Yarden uploaded it as well.
Great. Yeah, I'm looking for that right now. Here it is. Okay. Well, no, those are images of it. Images. I'll go to the article for now to show it, but is your let's
see if I can get the link.
Okay, great. Yeah.
If I can ask Yarden for the link.
Okay, great. And then for right now, I'm going to show. Let's see. Yes, their chaos is our piece. Well, that's the piece. Yes, that's the article, but we're looking for the actual video from it. Yeah. But let me just show some of these while you're looking for that. Okay, yeah, those are some images. Thanks, Brad, for that. So let's see. Let me zoom in. So, okay.
I'm trying. Let's see what this is. Let's see what this
Oh,
is.
Katie,
Are we live right now?
We're live. Yeah,
Oh,
we're
okay.
live. Yeah, it's okay. We can cut this part out after. Yeah.
Katie, over here in this top image,
Yeah.
it looks, you can see this man
It's
in
kicking.
the
Yeah.
process of kicking.
Right. And
And
Idris,
then-
are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
No,
Oh,
sorry.
am I there in the? I'm here on the stream. No, I'm not there. No,
Got it. Okay.
I was pushed out of the back.
Got it at this point. Okay, so it's I'll read this.
you
I'll
know,
read this. So David Moritz kicking 2 people in a West Asheville Public Library event.
Sorry.
Okay. June 29, 2024. Top still from security camera video where Moritz kicks a person inside the library, causing them to fall on the ground. Moritz uploaded the video to his Instagram page with the background music and the title "Jews Fight Back," referencing the slogan of Betar.
Again, Katie, this speaking to what you said earlier about like they literally just
brag about it.
posted.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Bottom, still from a second security camera video where Moritz kicks another person outside the library, and later Instagram post, Moritz said he had been taking kickboxing lessons so he could fight anti-Semitism. This also reminds me of the thing that we just showed the other day, which is, okay, yeah, we have it in our archive. Thank you so much, Nate. Nate found it. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Brad, as always. Nate, please do text it to me and Brad. And everyone give Nate a thumbs up, and everyone give Brad a thumbs up, and of course Idris. But here's video of the event. But this does remind me of the event that we covered earlier this week, which was a land theft sale real estate event where this woman who's a pro-Israel rabid supporter, disgusting person, said that she was being, like, they posted video and she said she was being harassed, and then rewind and there's literally footage of her right before she runs into the crowd, where she yells at and spits on an Israeli, spits on a rabbi.
Wow.
So the pro-Israel supporter spits on a rabbi. We saw this all throughout the encampments where the violence was committed by the actual Israel supporters, but the media made it seem like, at the very best, they made it seem like both sides were engaging in it. Right. The very worst, though, and this was more typical, it was only the Palestine supporters who were engaging in it, even though the literal evidence was opposite. You had Dana Bash and Netanyahu, both of them, comparing the Palestine supporters at the encampments to Nazi Germany. No joke. So Brad, once you get that, just give me a thumbs up. But I also want to say that it's really interesting that this is a New York Times. This is a Donald Trump appointed judge who found in your favor. And she said that this was
he said
Judge Alan Albright ruled in your favor, and ordered Texas State to continue paying you for another year or until your lawsuit against the school reaches an outcome, whichever comes first. And the judge said the state, quote, put Dr. Robinson's career in grave danger by violating his First Amendment rights.
My victory lap.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. Cool. Because I couldn't see I was in another window. Yeah. So, but here's the video again that is exonerating of your supporters and incriminating of the person who's claiming to be the victim.
Right. So, it doesn't seem like a violent situation at all,
Yeah. Then
they seem very young. He seems very boomered, haggard. Bong.
Kick.
Yeah, and there's another one, I believe, inside.
Well, and even then, what strikes me too, like he does that, he does this kick here, and then the rest of the people, their response is not violence immediately.
Right.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. Really, a lot of restraint from those kids too. So, 4 people were charged. They accepted pleas. From what I understand, there was no investigation of the 3 people who really came in and broke up the event. And so a lot of other people, had a lot of trouble from this as well. So it was my first time, and actually I didn't really know anyone. But it's also, you also brought up about the encampments, and in Yarden's article, he explains that this guy was a bit of a professional agitator, and he had just come from UCLA, where I think there was a very brutal attack of the encampment. So
yes, there was.
Yeah, and he bragged that he was somehow there or something like this. So it's kind of pattern of being in these things, and there we have it.
Yeah, and the ADL, of course, included this incident on its bogus anti-Semitism map.
Right.
So they included that on their map. And this is why when the ADL talks about the increase in anti-Semitism, you should know that the increase in anti-Semitism, their examples of anti-Semitism include when Israel supporters physically attack someone.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And then it also called him a Holocaust. Some media outlets said it was a that the agitator was a Holocaust survivor. I mean, if that's true, he is great plastic surgeon.
Yeah,
not,
or like a time capsule or something like that, because he would have been like 90-something years old.
Exactly,
right,
right. That too.
Yeah, right. You know, if he was actually, you know, say he was in Buchenwald or, you know, or when he was liberated and he was a baby, he'd still be incredibly old. You know,
right? That's what I'm saying. He'd have amazing plastic surgeons.
Oh yes, exactly.
Yeah, the only way that we could explain that. And they even pursued at one point charges of ethnic intimidation against some of the people who attended. So again, what we're seeing is, you know, the total, every accusation is a confession.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's what shout out to all the SJP chapters who have like rallied to my support. And, you know, that's the first, when I explained to them the story, that's the first thing they said, right? It comes to mind. Every accusation is a confession.
Right. Yeah. This is so funny. We also have Brad, Nate just sent it to us again, the self-incriminating footage, because these people, these Israel supporters are so incredibly entitled and coddled. Let's actually show, we have this. This is really telling. Let's not play the audio in case it's like a copyright issue, but we actually have the Instagram post from this person. It's still up. And it says, when Jews fight back on repeat. And you're going to see that it's indisputable who is engaging in the violence here.
Right.
So we're getting that up. Thanks again, Nate, for that. And let's see, I can also, in the meantime, read some super chats.
Well, and Katie, I just wanted to mention what you had said earlier about the ADL. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe one of the reasons why their tally of quote unquote incidents of anti-Semitism is like so high is basically because they now officially consider any anti-Zionist
of course
event as like they're lumping in Zionism and Judaism are the same thing.
Yeah,
so
that's their whole shtick. I mean, they equate anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism. And as we've said so many times, not only is that inaccurate, but that in itself is anti-Semitic.
Yes.
Because it perpetuates the dual loyalty claim, which says that, you know, all Jews are a monolith who are loyal to Israel.
All Jews love Israel, the government, the state of Israel.
Yeah, all Jews
blah,
love.
blah, blah.
I mean, and again, this is why you see Israel literally live streaming a genocide, and then it says that Israel represents all Jews. But you know, as I know that you know, Dr. Robinson knows full well, there is a whole tradition of anti-Zionist Jewish history,
for sure,
which is totally buried and never gets talked about.
And they were the ones who invited me to the talk, actually, you know, and the person, you know, a lot of well-known anti-Zionist Jewish activists, and the person I've been working with, and, you know, basically the whole crew we've been doing the research with, you know, I'm the only person who's not Jewish, actually.
Right,
so,
right.
you know, and actually all of them, many of them were born in the 67 borders as well.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Wow,
so, you know, if anything, I tend to say that what's very interesting about the past 4 years of the movement is that it's the first time in my life where I've seen Zionism and you know, Jewishness be pulled apart in such a way, right? Like, you know, the movement has done a really good job of distinguishing between the two and drawing hard and fast lines, right? And you could think of like repression, or, you know, the counterinsurgency is trying to push them back together.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yes. And trying to like use all Jews as a human shield and make us all like complicit in this genocide. So let's take a look at the this video of the Jews fighting back video. Oh. Okay, well, it's let's see.
I added the sound, Katie, because it's only 3 seconds long, and I feel like it kind of
play it with the sound.
It showed how he was this post, and with that sound, he's clearly making it some like romanticized, you know,
victory dance, literally victory dance. Yeah. Okay, so let's show that again, just so people can see it. Thanks. When Jews fight back on repeat. So
the kid's hands aren't up. He's like, you know, not fighting.
And did anything happen to him, to this guy?
No. I from what I understand, he's running for office now.
Oh, great.
Yeah, like local office or something like this.
And then we have another video of someone named Monica Buckley. So she discusses fighting people at West Asheville. Let's take a look at this. Yarden also sent this. Brad, I sent this to you and Nate. And by the way, thank you, everyone. This channel needs mods. Yeah, Phantomus Fanta, where are you? I didn't give him a lot of... but if anyone wants to volunteer to be a mod, let me know. Let us know. And again, guys, please do like the stream. We need to get people hearing these really important stories. I'm not saying give a like out of insecurity. Yeah.
I would also say if someone's spamming the chat or something like that, that's one thing. But if someone is just not saying something that you agree with or hear, I personally purposely leave it up because I kind of think this channel, like, we should allow people to say things even if you disagree with them, just so long as you're not being like, you know, a bigot or something or spamming.
Yeah, and we do try to catch those things. Yes. Okay. So let's see. Here is a woman named Monica Buckley talking about what happened, and she is obviously an Israel supporter.
People just stood up from their seats in the library room and came towards us and surrounded us, and then they were just blocking us, and then they started clapping in our faces and screaming "Free Palestine." And then one of them grabbed my phone out of my hand and started running away. So I jumped her to get my phone back. And when I jumped her, a swarm of people, masked people, just jumped on me and started hitting me and punching me. And I held on and I fought hard and I didn't stop fighting the whole time. And those little fuckers can fuck off.
Okay, so
and she's talking about the same thing we saw the video from earlier.
Right. The same situation, right?
The one where all of the people there are not engaging in violence at all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not a mark on her. Someone just wrote.
No,
they took pictures later with like bandages, like a cartoon, wrapped up heads and stuff like that. But and in fact, I always thought it was like it was so ridiculous that it would somehow go away, but it's been blown out of total proportion, especially given that they were in many cases the aggressor, and in all cases that we have the aggressor. So
that's really wow. Well, Idris, thank you for coming on. Anything else that you want to make sure we mention?
No, thank you for having me. And I want to give a shout out to all my colleagues, comrades, all the students. All the people in the universities around the country, and all the people fighting in Palestine. But thank you to all the people who showed solidarity. It's too many for me to name, but I want to say that I really thank you, and all the people who are still facing disciplinary action for their speech for Palestinian liberation. Keep fighting on, and if I can win, you can too. And we're gonna get through this. We're gonna make it through.
Yes, very, very true. And there's so many there. Sadly, there are like so many who have faced this. Some have been fired. Shehada is one example, and we will link to this great piece by Yarden. And by the way, yes, that kicker, the guy who did kick, he is a real estate investor who's currently running for Asheville City Council, and Buckley. The woman we just heard from is a realtor and yoga instructor, and she openly supports the U.S. reboot of Betar, and which is a group that's so terrorist that Tish James ordered it to stop its activities in the state of New York. And then another person who is an agitator at this event was a Christian Zionist who describes himself as a MAGA extremist. So these are the great people who are claiming to be victims. Yes. And as you pointed out, Moritz had taunted students in the solidarity encampments at UNCA and UCLA.
Right.
Yeah. So and
it's like it's kind of like that. I think of it like kind of like that Andrew Callahan documentary about Kelly or whatever, who like older guy who finds this mission and then goes around the country causing havoc. It
Right.
seems like that's his kind of MO, you know?
Yeah. It's really insane. Yeah. So, well, let's definitely have you back on to give us
Thank
updates,
you.
and we will we'll have on other people who are facing this kind of discrimination.
Great.
And to make sure that we keep on top of this. And also it's great to celebrate these victories.
Yeah. Sigh of relief, you know, and then it is good to do a victory lap for this too, you know. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Have a great day. Okay, everyone. So that's been a great stream. What a marathon stream. Let's see, Brad, what are we going to do? We are going to, I just tried to add you. Where are you? That's so weird. Oh, that was weird. That was like a delay. Are we going to Patreon any of this?
Katie, remember why I explained to you that happens with the custom layout?
Oh, right. Yeah. Are we going to Patreon any of this?
I don't know.
Me neither.
That was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was great. Well, obviously we'll leave up
to Idris and all of our guests.
Yeah, that was really, I feel like we should just leave it all up. We may Patreon it if there's something that like gets it some kind of limited visibility.
If that one synthesizer kick boom.
Oh no, I meant some of
sets
the
off a
rape
red
stuff.
flag.
If that does happen, then we'll put it on.
Right.
Yeah.
I
don't want I don't want this to be limited visibility, the whole stream,
Right.
over some parts that we can then post separately.
Right.
So stay tuned, but we already have Patreon for you guys for this week. Yeah.
Which again, like I know I don't need to say this to anyone, but it doesn't stop. It never ceases to frustrate me that anything that we've talked about today, we're not making anything up. Like you're just reporting on what has occurred, what is on the record and whatnot, and why that should get some sort of censorship is just very frustrating.
Yeah. I totally agree. And today's stream was really excellent. And don't forget, we will have Ali Abunima. And thank you for the one person who became a Patreon supporter today. I mean, I can't believe that more of you don't have literally $12 a year to throw down for
25 cents Monday through Friday.
Is that for the $1 or the $5? $5.
25
yeah, I mean,
cents
even that,
Monday
but
through-
I'm just saying, like, even just a $1 person, you know, not some shows don't even have that option. They just have $5 or above. But I will read some of these super chats. Thank you for those. Thanks for covering this from the unknown. Jay Jelperman writes, the common thread is torture. Klaus Barbie, Pinochet, CIA, and Mossad Shin Bet are part of the same intelligence community. So naturally, they use the same techniques. Yep. And intelligence is put in quotes. Thank you for the super chat, Rose English, for the let's do a symbolic support. Thank you so much for that, Alexander. And Alexander writes, we love truth. Thank you. And Alexander says, thank you, Katie. You host a good show. Thank you so much. What is NOK? What currency is that?
Boy, I don't want to guess incorrectly.
Yeah. Nepalese, someone said that, but I'm not sure if that's true.
I think I didn't know what the currency name was, but I was going to guess Norway, and it is the Norwegian krone.
Oh, right. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, this was thank you so much to Ryan, and thank you especially to Mohammed, who is so hardworking and has gone through so much and is just a great analyst and also human being. So don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Thank you for the super chats. Become Patreon supporters. And we will see you Tuesday night, and we'll keep seeing you at these extra daytime streams. And Brad, thank you so much for all of your help. And thank you, Nate, for your help as well. And I think that is it. I'm just going to see if we have one more. I was really hoping we got one more Patreon. No. Wait. No. I got an email from Patreon about like a network, but yeah. All right. I'm gonna start stopping these. I can't, obviously, when there's this topic. I'm not gonna
start stopping.
I meant like stop, like pause until we get a Patreon. I'm gonna keep, or likes or super chats. But no, definitely not with. I mean, imagine if Oh my God. If I like interrupted the guest during the first part of the show to do that, just take me out back and do whatever. Old Yeller style. Just kidding. Oh my God. What if we got demonetized just for that stupid comment?
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Obviously, I didn't even mean to do a dog thing because we are very pro dog on this show. So that wasn't even funny. All right.
No,
now I really want you to punish me, but just like rhetorically, yeah. All right. We will see you Tuesday night, but of course subscribe because we release clips every day. Bye everyone.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
And I don't know what the I'm doing. Antifa!